Well, howdy ho, how you guys doing today? Pretty quiet day for me today, honestly. Went for a nice walk, got thinking, I keep thinking about poor Mr. Jugmeat Singh. I'm gonna have to make a pretty hard video for him, and I honestly hope that he sees it. I hope that the people who are around him are actually trying to figure out why people are not voting NDP. And that's basically what I spent my whole day doing, kind of walking around, shopping, grocery shopping, cleaning up my own space, all that kind of stuff. And really thinking how to communicate this properly to Mr. Singh, that the reality is people aren't going to vote for him because he's wearing that turban. And if he doesn't take it head on, right? I'm not saying he should take the turban off, far from it. But if he doesn't take it head on, and actually do some ads, he's never going to become the leader of this country. And it's a shame, right? It's a shame. Hey, Crouching, how you doing? You're in for the song. So let's get to it, right? Hold on. Can't be that low. Gotta up it. Glad you're here, Crouching, man. Good to see you. Crouching, where do you live even, bud? Where are you coming in from? We're streaming away, we're streaming today. I hope you're doing fine. There's so many streams for us to see, but this one here is mine. I hope that you're happy, I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me, watch the world go to hell as we are streaming away. Streaming today, let's stream today. Chatham, eh? 3 hours out west. Very nice, very nice. Still here in Ontario. Good to see that there's other Ontarians actually coming into this place, because a big, not issue or problem that I'm facing though, is that lots of the people who come into this live stream, we're all over the place, right? Like people. I got people from the Netherlands, I got people from Germany, I got people from Russia coming in here. And it's good to see that there are other Ontarians. Hopefully other Torontonians start to come in sooner rather than later. But we'll see. We'll see how this thing grows. Today's going to be a very loosey-goosey kind of a stream, honestly. There's another one. There's Misty. She's also... And then Victini is also an Ontarian. So there's a couple of Ontarians that pop in here as well. But right now, we're fairly blown all over the place. And some people come in from Thunder Bay, right? All this kind of stuff. This particular stream tonight is going to be pretty loose, pretty loosey-goosey, I think. Friday evenings, I've been noticing a decline in viewership since the school year started. I think a lot of people are going back to school. That's taken up a lot of their time. And on top of that, Fridays, right? I'm actually starting to contemplate not doing a stream on Friday evenings because I'm also going to work on during the weekends, and Friday is always the day. No, I know, Bumble Guppy. That's I'm not asking you to. I'm not asking you to apologize for it. No. You're. Where are you at, Bumble Guppy? You're down in the States. I want to say that you're in Missouri or something like that. That's not right. 4-day work weeks in Iceland. Yeah, exactly. Like the 4-day work week is it should be here already. Honestly, Oregon, very nice. Oregon. So you're out in the prairies, right? Are you in the rural communities or are you in the urban center? Oh, and Oregon's beautiful. Beautiful. I'm from the prairies myself, Bumbleguppy, so I feel a kinship to the people from Oregon. We're all very... Oregon's not the state that recently made a big... What state recently made a big thing with their First Nations people? They gave up a 40% of their land or something like that. I'll be deep in the cold ground before I recognize Missouri. Yep. You're from Oregon, all right. are you thinking of not doing the Friday show, John? It sucks, but I totally get it. Honestly, I think it's going to come down to how this show goes today, and how I feel after this weekend. I think that I'm going to make a decision this week about whether or not I continue forward with the Friday show. But again, like this is all loosey-goosey. Who knows what the hell is going on, right? Oh, Oregon's not so beautiful. It's on fire. It's smoky outside right now, eh? Oy vey. I thought that we were through the wildfire, right? Like, hold on. Let's take a look then, bud. Let's Oregon wildfires. Map. Oh, man. I kind of stopped dealing with... it's not so bad, but yeah. That's not as bad as it could be. For sure. Oy vey. It's kind of annoying that each individual place has its own individual like wildfire map. Like I think it's just because if people could see how crazy things were across the entire thing, right? Like I know if we go to BC wild, let's compare. Let's compare because the wildfires in British Columbia were outrageous this year. And I suspect things have kind of calmed down as things have cooled. Yeah, things are cooled down a little bit. Oh, man, if I was living in Kamloops, man. If I was living in Kamloops. Hasn't rained in 3 to 4 months, eh? No, we haven't done the number yet. Kind of keeping things nice and loosey-goosey right now. We're just kind of having informal chats, really. Deciding whether or not I'm still going to do the Friday stream. We'll see. Let's do it. Let's do the number. There's enough of you here. Let's go. Today's number is... I'm going for 2. I've been feeling 2 all day. Not that it matters. I never win this thing.
Here we go for today's number. It's September 17th,
all right, what do we got? Bumble Guppy crouching.
2021.
We got a 4 POC.
10 balls.
10 balls.
Each ball has a number.
Has a number.
Numbers 1 through 10.
Roll the numbers. You're going for a 2 as well, crouching? So we're going to double up. We're going to double up on failure is what it is. Bumble Guppy, you in on this? You going to pick a number? You're running out of time.
A number.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, he's leaving us in suspense.
Today's number is
9. Hey,
9.
That's like a magic number for him. So there you go. So I'm going to say that it's a magical thing anyway. Let's see if I could... No, because... Well, dude, you came in after, and then you picked a 6 anyway. I say that... Yeah, exactly. It was upside down. It was upside down. You know what? That's right. So just, it's all topsy-turvy. So go buy a lottery ticket and just flip everything upside down and you're going to be a winner, buddy. All right, let's say farewell to the beautiful autumn colors. Ontario. So let's touch base very quickly. Honestly, this is what it's going to look like. I don't think that there's going to be anything. You're seeing the Liberals do... Even, like, all the parties are now in the, like, endorsement bump phase, which is to say that, like, Obama and Clinton have come down for the Liberals. You're getting, like, Mulrooney touching in with the Conservatives, and Bernie Sanders put an endorsement in for Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. Yeah, it's going to be more Trudeau in terms of the face, but it's essentially just... the same as it was, right? Like nothing's changing. Even the PPC are starting to cool a little bit, right? That anger that was going up from the PPC is starting to cool back down again. To me, now the big question is, does the PPC get a seat or not, right? If the PPC gets a seat, that's a big crisis in my perspective. Like that's a crisis. And even if they don't, honestly, the fact that they're there, the fact that they're polling as high as they are, like the fact that they are motivated, right? They're politically motivated to get into the streets, which I've been saying this whole time. That's how you make effective politics, right? Effective politics lives in the streets. And the PPC seem to understand that. They seem to understand that intrinsically. So no new news really coming out with the PPC, no new news coming out for anything really. So now we're just kind of settling into like, well, why the hell was this the outcome, right? Or like, what's up with this outcome? And I just think it's people don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. That they're just sort of settling into the old pattern because they don't know what else to do. And they don't want to vote for a guy with a turban on. And, you know, they don't trust the conservatives. And people, like, the honeymoon is over with Trudeau. Like, it's so as far as the average Canadian is concerned, it's just a set of bad options, right? That they're just kind of like, wah. And everybody's pissed off and exhausted. And nobody really wants a big change in government, honestly. Like, the big question, I think, that finally this election, that we're all coming to at the end of this election is, why did we even have this election, right? And I think that people were not that interested in change. People were not that interested in I think people were fairly happy with how things were going, honestly. Like, I think that most people were fairly happy with how this pandemic response was going and how it was unfolding. And they're mainly confused about why this election happened in the first place. And it only really makes sense once you understand that the Liberals wanted to get their majority so that they could just ram through a whole bunch of post-pandemic legislation because the capitalist state knows that this is a big opportunity to restructure the society for their benefit, right? They understand that moving out of this pandemic, they've got to convince the public to accept serfdom, right? That's the goal of the capitalist class. How do we get these people to accept serfdom? The outcome of this election is, of course, a victory ultimately for the capitalist class, because the capitalists are already in charge, right? Like the corporate capitalist state is already in charge, right? And so while they want to see one of their parties, either the Liberals or the Conservatives, in a majority position just so they can streamline the operation, this is still an acceptable outcome, right? It still means that they maintain their system of power. It still means that they are in control. They're in the driver's seat. It does mean that they've got to tolerate the NDP, which as far as they're concerned is a nuisance party, right? That, like, the NDP from the capitalist perspective is just a nuisance. It's not really critical to them to defeat the NDP or any of that. Because, by and large, the NDP are still fairly pro-capitalist and are still willing to work. It's just that the NDP are giving people more benefits than the capitalist wants. Because the capitalists want to give zero, right? They want to ensure that there's a maximum amount of people homeless. They're a sociopathic death cult, and so they're happy to see people starving in the streets. And if it wasn't for the NDP, many of the supports that were put in place would have been significantly diminished. Significantly diminished. Like, and that's just the facts, right? Like, and of course we know that the Trudeau Liberals, they wanted to enact cuts. They want to get rid of all these policies. Like, they want to get rid of them. It's really, really clear. It's really, really clear. Matthias, my grandma voted NDP. Very happy with her turnaround, at least. There you go. It's small steps, bud. It's small steps. That's how you carry away a mountain, is by carrying away small stones. It's like people view the election like rearranging furniture and not moving out of a burning house. Yeah, exactly. I think, but that is a really great analogy, actually, Bumbleguppy. Like, it is. Like, people are looking at this election and being like, oh, so if we put the couch over here, the chair's over here. But yeah, the house is still on fire. And none of these guys are actually saying, like, hey, the house is on fire. Let's get out of the house. Let's try to put out the fire, right? Like, none of that is in the conversation at all. And I think people are really aware of it. Like the housing conversation went away instantly. And it went away instantly because even average Canadians understand that none of their solutions are solutions, right? Even average Canadians have put together that, like, well, it doesn't matter how much more housing you build. Like, there are billionaires in the conversation, right? Like, none of the solutions. And so what you have is you have this kind of disillusioned group of people who did everything right, made all the right promises, and are just being told to fuck off, basically. And none of the politicians who are in any position right now are willing to stand up and say, capitalism is a problem and we need to confront these capitalists. So I do think that Justin Trudeau might be up for a leadership review within his own party. I think that that might happen, given that he is, like, if this is the outcome for him, he's lost power, right? And he's steadily losing power, right? This could also be a leadership review for Aaron O'Toole, right? And Andrew Scheer had essentially the same outcome, where he put the Liberals in a minority position and gained seats, and they ousted him anyway, right? So both of these party leaders might be up for review, right? Jagmeet Singh, I think, is going to be safe. He grew his party. He's holding onto the wheel pretty well. And also, I think Canadians like him. He's polling very well. He's just got to face the turban issue. Annamie Paul, I think, is up for leadership review, for sure. She has already started talking about stepping down. And when a politician starts talking about stepping down, they've basically just admitted that they're going to step down. Like, you don't come back from that. Blanchet, I think, stays, and of course, Maxime Bernier stays for sure. This election, if there has been a winner of this election, it's for sure the People's Party. It's for sure Maxime Bernier, without a doubt. Yep, I recommend still voting NDP, right? I still think that of all the parties, they're the ones that have been pushing forward in a manner that has actually been helpful for us. And they're also the ones that are in a pivotal position, right? They do, in many ways, hold like an advisory position that actually has power. They can actually say no, and it actually means that things don't happen. The only good thing about this is the Lib minority, yeah, at least at the bare minimum, yeah. It all sucks, though. Well, and it just kind of shows you that we're still stuck we're in the grieving process, right? We've all witnessed capitalism die. Capitalism is dead. The aspects of capitalism that the edifices and the illusionary aspects of capitalism that are still around exist because they've been propped up by the state, right? And that's not capitalism, right? That's not how capitalism professes it functions, right? No capitalist enterprise is supposed to be supported by the state. That's not how capitalism works. So capitalism is dead. It doesn't exist here in North America any longer. What we have is like state-controlled capitalism, right? Which like isn't really that much different than like what the Soviets were doing generally, because capitalism destroys itself, and so the state has to come in. It has to come in and it has to take control, right? Especially amidst this pandemic. And the countries that admitted that capitalism has failed and it's not going to work took control of the means of production, so to speak. The state took control. The countries that have enacted more power in that regard have done better, right? And the countries like the United States that have taken a more hands-off, let the free market decide approach, well, they're edging up towards almost 1 million people killed from COVID. Like they're in a major crisis that they don't seem to give a shit about at all, right? And you're seeing the abandonment full scale. Like the people who are taking to the streets and like these kind of deluded anti-masker types, like they're desperate. And it all is like we're witnessing the death of capitalism, or we've witnessed the death of capitalism, and we're going through a grieving process. And this outcome tells me that we're still in the denial phase, right? We're still in denial about it. We don't know what to do about it. Some of us have moved on to anger, right? And this outcome really does speak to me of anger, right? Then we're going to go into bargaining. Like liberals are in the bargaining phase, many of them. Because, oh yeah, climate change is real. Here it comes. Let's negotiate with the sun, right? Like, haha, that's not real. And then we're going to go into a big depression phase, right? And like, no matter how I cut it, like it's like this seems to be a grieving process, right? That I could fit that. I could fit this narrative in however you like, right? That if we're in a state like, so a state of depression means that we don't change, right? There's no change here. We're all just like stuck. We're in like this constipated sort of period of time where we can't move, right? Oh, let's take a look. You guys always come in and are so chatty right at the beginning. I love it. Yeah, if Justin doesn't pick up seats, he should step down for making us vote in a pandemic. Yeah, I mean, I think his gambit didn't pay out. And I think that somebody else down here said that he's probably going to step down. I think that that's likely. I just don't think he wants the job anymore, right? I honestly, like, I don't think that he wants to be the leader of the country anymore. I think that the novelty has worn off. Like, when he started, he was wearing costumes and shit, and it was all very, very, like, high-minded speeches and all this kind of stuff. But as we've moved forward, we've kind of taken a look at him and been like, oh, that's all you have, right? You're just a showman. And I think that the jig is up. This outcome sort of shows that that's the case. And he will likely step down. Or at least there'll be a challenge. At least there'll be a challenge. If the NDP can steal some con seats, I'll be happy. I mean, both of them are gaining seats, so... Been dead 100 years. Yeah, we should have moved all the way back then. Yeah. No, the issue is 100 years ago, capitalism died, or was in the death throes, and the state moved to save it, and we allowed it to exist. We allowed it to be saved. This time we should kill it for sure. Like, this time we've got to kill it. Are you doing a poll when more people come in about Friday streams? Oh, I might do that. Honestly, I'll just take a look at the numbers of people. I don't need to do a poll about it. Pissed off. I can just take a look at the numbers, and if the numbers are the same as they are in the rest of the week, then I'll stick it out. But I also got to worry about my own mental health, right? Like, I'm essentially working every day now, right? Like, I don't actually have a day off anymore, so I gotta worry about that too. Victini, Trudeau will step down soon, Freeland will take the reins. Yeah, that's a believable narrative. I think they're trying to lose so they can blame the Conservatives for the coming recession, which will be worsened by austerity measures. Well, and the austerity measures, like, the NDP is not going to let austerity measures go through, right? Like, that's one of the victories that you can point to at the outcome of this election, is that the NDP doesn't want austerity measures. They're not going to sign off on austerity measures. So what it's going to take is the Liberal-Conservative alliance is finally going to have to just go, fine, we're allies, and they're just going to have to start voting together, right? Which is a disaster for the Liberals. That if the Conservatives and the Liberals start to vote hand in hand in order to commit austerity on the populace, while the NDP is standing there saying, hey, we could tax the rich instead, it's a political non-starter, right? Like that, like, Canadians have destroyed political parties over this kind of stuff. Like, we destroyed the Conservatives, the Mulroney Conservatives. Literally, they went from a majority government to 2 seats, right? We did that. The Chrétien to Martin to Dion to Ignatieff Liberals was this steady decline, right? Was just like a steady decline into just like, oh, you guys are literally not working for us anymore. And the Trudeau Liberals, their success was convincing people that they were actually working for us again. Right? But they're not. Like, they're not. And it's becoming obvious. And so they are going to experience the same sort of thing. And it's going to hand off Trudeau to Freeland, probably. And unless Freeland actually does something that actually benefits the populace, which she won't because she's a Liberal, we're just going to see that steady decline, right? And the big question is, well, are we going to have a Harper moment where, like, the Conservatives come up the middle? Or is this the NDP's time to shine? And if the NDP aren't going to take on their biggest challenge, which is that white Canadians are not voting for a man in a turban, I fear for the future of Canada. It's completely believable to me that a Conservative government will come up the middle, right? It's completely believable to me because Canadians' racism supersedes their sense very cleanly, very cleanly. But yeah, and that will start to occur if the Liberals and the Conservatives start to vote together, because if the Liberals and Conservatives start to vote together on economic issues, then even the dumbest Canadian, even the real the paste-eating Canadians are like, wait a minute, if the Liberals are voting with the Conservatives to commit austerity, then why bother supporting the Liberals, right? Good question. Real good question. Freeland is an interesting figure, though. Freeland is an interesting figure to me because Trudeau, I think, is just reading cue cards. Whereas I think Freeland actually has ideas, right? I think Freeland has ideas and thoughts, and she's written a book and all this kind of stuff. So she's an interesting figure. And could she be swayed, right? Could she be swayed to actually do meaningful things that actually help people? We'll see, right? We'll see. But it's all going to come down to, like, what promises they make, right? Like, the baffling part about this election, and the thing that really does convince me that the Liberals are trying to lose, because I think there's... Yeah, Victini, you said it. I think they're trying to lose, right? Is that they didn't offer anything. Like, they literally called this snap election to try to convince people to give them a majority, and they offered nothing. Like, nothing. Like, what did they offer, right? I'm always baffled by this. I'm always staggered when political parties go into elections and offer literally nothing. Like, literally nothing. Like, there's so many things they could have offered. Student debt forgiveness. Student debt forgiveness alone, I think, would have given them their majority. If they had just stood up and said, yeah, the student debt situation is actually a failure. We are going to address that. And that's actually easy. Like, that's actually easy to address. So, like, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it, right? Why wouldn't you at least promise something like that, right? And same, like, pharmacare, dental care, there's the basic income, like, there's a ton of things that they could stand up and at least pander to, and they didn't even pander, right? So I think I'm with you, Victini. I don't think they want to win. I think that they want out. I think that they saw that it was nice when they got into power and they got to say all the nice things, but when it came time to actually do the work, they've all realized that, oh, we have to confront capital. And none of them are actually interested in confronting capital. So, and why aren't they interested in confronting capital? Because those are the people they go to brunch with, right? They don't want to make those people upset, right? They would rather pander to the people who are paying their bills than actually help anybody, right? It's happening. Both Libs and Cons will institute austerity and tax the middle class. Yeah, what middle class? Exactly. That's the real truth. Like, there is no middle class in Canada. This is something that we need to really, really get rid of, right? This idea that wealth distribution in Canada. Like, it's pretty straightforward at this point. Like, yeah, here's a fine. So, like, your poorest people actually have negative 0.2, right? Like, negative 0.2 of the amount of wealth. Yeah. So, or like 0.2, right? And then your second, third. So, by the time you're in your third, right? If you've got 10, if there's 10 segments, right? Well, 5 is directly the middle, right? So 4, 6, right? So there's your middle class right there. What's this middle class that you're talking about? I don't understand what you're talking about when you say middle class. Like, do you mean like a guy who can afford a car? Like, is that middle class now? Like, everybody's working. Like, everybody in the quote-unquote middle class, right? There's no such thing as a person who's working and their wife or spouse is not, right? That doesn't exist. So everybody's working. Does it mean that instead of going to work at like a retail job or going to work in like as a hairstylist or something, you're going to an office, right? Does that make you middle class now? Like, it just seems to me like this middle class narrative exists explicitly to maintain a divide between types of workers that doesn't exist at all, right? And of course, this wealth needs to be completely protected at all times, right? There's a reason why this is red, right? Because they're liberals. Liberals are in the 1%, man. Like, they are part of that. And they're not going to turn around and raise taxes on themselves. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, let's negotiate with melting icebergs. Exactly. After the Depression, neither party will be relevant. Yeah, we'll have copies, the Americans, until only purple and orange remain. Yeah. Well, and there are European nations that did exactly this, right? They literally collapsed their traditional parties, that their conservatives and liberals are just gone, like literally gone. Like they have like no power in the House whatsoever. And it was the socialists, the communists, and the fascists that took over, right? And fortunately, in all cases, it was the socialists who seized the largest share of power, but the fascists seized a good amount of power too. And I expect we'll see the same sort of trajectory here. And it really is a shame that in the mix of that transition, we're also dealing with the high level of racism that exists in Canada, because they're not going to vote for a guy in a turban, right? That's like a wrinkle in the plan, right? That if Jagmeet Singh was named Jason Singer and he was just like some 22-year-old fresh out of college, like, yeah, we're here, man, the NDP, yeah, let's go, let's raise taxes on the rich, we don't need to take this austerity shit, let's go, NDP, yeah, people would vote for that. Imagine libs talking to polar ice caps, yeah. Culture war is taking over. Well, as long as they can keep the conversation in the culture war, right? The cons will pay the price for getting in bed for anti-science, and the libs have failed to institute progressive policies too many times. Yeah, like, and the culture war, like the woke crowd, like it's here, it's right in front of us, and it's just a way to completely distract from the actual conversation, which is about class, right? So instead of looking at this graph and saying, hey, this seems like total bullshit, right? Like, let's talk about how bullshit this is. Like, it's complete bullshit, right? From any position that you want to take it. And if you're going to stand in front of me and say, like, oh, these people are just better, right? Then you're deluded. Like, you're living in a fucking dream world. You're just an arrogant, narcissistic sociopath. Like, do not tell me that the people who have this wealth got it because they're hard workers or they're the best, right? It's absolutely blatantly right in front of your face not the case. Like, you genuinely have to, like, I assume you're lying to me, like, and you're certainly lying to yourself about it. And even if it was the case, right? Let's take in the fantasy as if it's real, right? But let's just live in the fantasy world. This is my favorite thing to do. Accept that the fantasy is real. So, who gives a fuck? You're telling me that we have a system where it's possible for someone to work so hard that it collapses the economy, that it creates massive wealth inequality, that it creates huge disparity throughout the society, where people can't get housing and can't get food and can't get jobs. So, and you're telling me that the core nugget of that is because people can work really hard to do it? Well, Ted Bundy worked really hard. Should we accept this? Like, Charlie Manson worked really hard. Does that mean that the outcome is acceptable? No, right? So the outcome is unacceptable because the outcome is unacceptable. And your justification of like, oh, they worked hard or they're the best is literally telling me that like Ted Bundy should get off because he worked really hard, right? Ted Bundy, yeah, it's really hard to murder people like that, right? It's really fucking hard to be a serial killer, man. It's hard work. And in my view, that's the same argument. Like, it's no different to me. And the people who are making that argument are as reprehensible, in my view. That they're literally saying it's acceptable for there to be homeless people, starving people, people who can't find work, people who can't find stability in their life because sociopaths work hard. No. Like, fucking no. Like, this is what the conversation should be. Right? This is what the conversation should be. Right? But it isn't. And incidentally, this graph that we're looking at is from 2012. So this is almost 10 years old. So sure as shooting, it's worse than this now. Right? Sure as shooting, it's worse than this now. And we can't have a conversation about this. Right? And the people who are attempting to have a conversation about it, the NDP, can't get votes. Why? Because white Canadians won't vote for a man with a turban. So we're literally saying to our political class, the culture war matters more than the class conversation, right? That issues of race do matter more to Canadians. Obviously they do. Here they have a very clear opportunity to get with a party who's actually saying raise taxes on the wealthy. Absolutely. Raise taxes on the wealthy, right? Maintain systems of support, right? I can't imagine why we need systems of support, right? And do more to help average Canadians, right? Working Canadians. Do more to help working Canadians. Jagmeet Singh also polls. He's very popular. Can't get support. So we care more about our racism than we care more about our starving children. Like that's the Canadian way, right? Gone, in my view, is this idea of like the kind, nice Canadian. We're an extremely racist nation. We are willing to continue impoverishing ourselves and our children because I don't want to vote for a guy that's got a turban on. That's legitimately where we're at. That is the narrative. And so the culture, so it's easy to get us into the culture war, right? The reason why the liberals and the conservatives keep doing it is because it's easy. It's easy to get us into this stuff. It's easy to get us wound up about this. It's easy to get us to stop talking about this, which is obviously a problem. Like, this is so obviously a problem, guys. Like, do I need to explain why this is a problem? If you have 10%, even 10% of your society with 60% of the wealth, it guarantees that poverty is going to persist in your society. It's a guarantee, right? Play a game of Monopoly, for Christ's sakes. Play a game of Monopoly, see what happens, and when you get booted out of the game, recognize that you're not getting booted out into the game and like you're just going to wait and then the game's going to be over. That literally you getting booted out of a game of Monopoly is you going into starvation, homelessness, and total desperation. And probably just death, right? It probably means that you just die, right? Like, and the game of Monopoly is how the system works. It's how the system works. So if we don't actually, like, confront this and start having conversations about this, and if we don't get over this, like, we don't get, oh, yeah, oh no, he's got a turban on, guys. Oh my God, he's got a turban on. I'm like, oh. But we're just a bunch of dumb fucking monkeys. And right now we're scared and exhausted. So we're certainly not going to, like, find it within us to be like, you know what? Voting for a guy with a piece of cloth wrapped around his head is acceptable to me so that my children can eat. Like, we just don't have it. We're just not there. We're so far behind where we think we are. Strike, strike, strike. No more Fridays. We'll see. We'll see. If it's too stressful doing this in your normal job, that might be too much. Well, and I think I might turn it into a compromise situation, right? Where I'm like I just may turn Fridays into a total faff, right? I just might turn Friday into just like a total faff. Like, instead of like going through the articles and like commenting on the articles or anything, I might just faff, you know? We'll see. We'll see. If you stop Friday's stream, I'm moving on Friday the 1st. Great. Look at that. How's that for timing, bud? How's that for time? You hired movers. Good. And you're just moving within the city? Good choice, dude. Good choice. I think that if my experience with movers, if you're moving from city to city, is that it's going to be a disaster. But if you're hiring movers within the city, that's going to be great. That's going to be great. A lot of people are house poor, they own a mortgage and barely make ends meet. Yeah, exactly. Because they've gotten suckered into the whole thing of, like, owning property. That's how you become a real person, right? And the political class and the corporate class, the capitalist death cult, has done a very good job splitting us up, right? That you have taxpayers, right? That's a type of person. You have middle class Canadians. That's a type of person. And once you are a type of person, they can draw a line around you and pander to you, and anything that's not within that little bubble, it can be used as a threat against you. Oh, if we raise the living standards for people who are living in the streets, then that's going to mean your dollar as a middle-class Canadian is going to be worth less, right? And they actively pit us against each other, like, and it's obvious. Like, it's like embarrassingly obvious at this point, right? But you go talk to like your average Canadian, right? And they like go talk to the beer drinkers. They can be tricked into these things. Like they live in a very superficial space because they're too exhausted to be anything else. You've got a point. I, the sole earner in my family with a unionized construction job that could kill me, and I earn super low six figures. I think top wage slave equals middle class in my confused mind. Yeah, I mean, and because there are, like, because there's no solidarity amongst the workers, right? Like, construction workers, I find, generally feel as though they are in a class. And I'm not saying this of you, of course, Victini, but the number one type of person who is going to tell me to just get a job, right, are your construction workers. Like, it's the number one type of person that says just get a job. And like, the... and like the reality of that hasn't really sunk in, and to them it's just as easy as like just walk onto a site and start hauling stones and shit, and it's like, right, but there's a trade-off there, right? Like there's a trade-off. Like you work a job where you could die, right? No thanks, straight up. Like I'm just sitting here being like, nah, that's cool. Like I don't think I'm gonna work a job where I could die. I don't think I'm interested in that. And if you're willing to accept that, that's fine. But, like, I just wish that there was more solidarity between the people who are working. Like, I feel at this point we should be having solidarity with, like, doctors and lawyers and engineers and construction workers and retail people. Like, should all be getting together and being like, hey, we're all working for wages. Sure, your wages are better than mine. That's fine. And sure, you're working, like, more aggressive jobs than I am. That's fine. But, like... The whirlpool of capital is sucking us all down, right? Like it is. And like I used to be a canary in the coal mine, and now I'm literally like a dude in the coal mine being like, hey, you notice how there's poison everywhere? Anyway, that was just sort of like odd little rant. Middle class just means turning your back on your fellow working class. It's a propaganda con. A small fraction of your fellows in front of the rest. Exactly. Middle class is a buffer between workers and the bourgeoisie. Exactly. Yeah, you're nailing it, Bumbleguppy. You're nailing it, man. What am I then? Lucky proletariat? No, dude, you're just a worker, right? Like this is the thing. Like you go to a job, you work the job, you get paid a wage for the job, and you're just in a position where you have like a union that maintains, at the very least, a certain standard, right? A certain standard of safety, a certain standard of benefits, a certain standard of all that, but you're still a worker, right? You've just created a union in order to act as like a shield and a sword against the capitalist forces. And most of the unions now have actually merged with the capitalists. That there's no longer this like, oh, we're gonna now it's a closer relationship now, and there's more of a streamlined understanding that like the capitalists can't just diminish workers' rights and things like this amongst the union, but the union exists to kind of prevent workers from striking and prevent workers from actually doing what needs to be done these days. And so you're in this union position, right? And don't get me wrong, like if you've got to be a worker without a union or a worker with a union, I'd much rather be a worker with a union. But that doesn't change what class you are. You still wake up every day, you go work for somebody you've never met, right? Doing a job that you probably just tolerate for the most part. And when you go home, right, you're tired and you go to sleep, or you watch like a couple hours of TV or something and then go to sleep, and then you wake up and do it again, right? And that is everybody's job, right? That's everybody's job. And because we have decided that some jobs are more precious than others, but like when you actually look throughout human history, human history is laden with very strange moments where like a job that we all would consider to be respectable, right, in the past, like in ancient China, you can go watch documentaries about this. In ancient China, it used to be that if you were a butcher, you were like worse than a slave. That you were like the worst type of person. Whereas now we're like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Like that's a respectable job and a respectable profession to be a butcher. And so our ideas of what is or is not good work to do change, right? And they change just based on what's necessary or based on our own growth and evolution and our own changes in idea of what is or is not beneficial. Like and of course, like someone who's working construction is going to think that they're the bee's knees because they're getting paid a lot. They've got a good union. And then on top of that, like they're in the midst, they're the working class amidst a housing scam, right? And it is a scam. Like let's be really clear. Like what's going on in Canada today is a scam. We have all the housing we need, right? Sure, we should be building more because the idea is that we're a growing population and all this kind of stuff. But none of that housing is going to get built, is going to actually make it into the hands of the people who need it. It's just going to get sold to a billionaire class who are going to hoard it and change it into Airbnbs and shit, right? Like, so we've got to start asking ourselves questions about, like, what is it to be in the working class and why is the outcomes, like why is our work being wasted? And it's being wasted because the group of people who do no work, who are worthless, right, take the fruits of our labor. Like if you build a building, right, you should feel really good about that. You helped build a building, right? Here it is, right? But the outcome is that some worthless billionaire you've never met who doesn't actually do any work, who just has billions of dollars, then gets to take your work and claim it for themselves, right? And are they going to dispense that housing to the people who need it? No. Of course they're not going to do that. Like, of course they're not going to do that. So, like, we got to do away with this sort of specious notion that there are delineations within the working class. We're all just working. Like, some of us have unions and some of us can negotiate and some of us can do this kind of stuff, but we're all just workers, right? And if we allow the capitalists to continue dividing us, well, then we're just going to lose. We're just going to lose. Seeing many big box retailers with hiring signs in town, they lay people off in a heartbeat. Before the pandemic, they moan on national TV playing victims because they cannot hire people. I actually think there's a scam going on in there, Crouching. I think that they are running a grift on us, and the grift is very simply this, that they want to be running skeleton crews now. They're no longer interested in hiring, like, having an actual base of workers, because having an actual base of workers is more expensive than having a skeleton crew who you can exhaust, right? So instead of having 10 people, you have 2 people, and you exhaust those 2 people, and then you just replace those 2 people, right? But those 2 people don't want to let go of the jobs that they have, because the jobs that they have are actually, full-time with benefits jobs. So they don't want to let it go. So they're willing to be ground into the earth. They're willing to accept the abuse, right? But most of these outletters, so like your Amazons and all this kind of stuff, they're also retail establishments. They're customer service establishments, right? So they can't spread into, if the public turns against them, right? If the public turns against them, then they won't come and shop at their retail establishments. So they need to pretend as though they're looking for workers who they're not going to hire and they're not interested because they've got their workers, their skeleton crew that they're grinding into the earth. That's their workers. And so they're not actually hiring. They're not doing any of that kind of stuff. But they need to pretend as though they are. And then to maintain sympathy in the populace, they go on national TV and complain how they can't find workers, right? It's a grift. It's completely a grift so that they can maintain support in the populace while also abusing their workers. And then if they do need to hire a worker, they will, but they're not actually hiring. They're just saying that they are, right? You got to remember, these guys are sociopaths. Like, they're sociopaths. They're not interested in hiring. If they wanted to hire, they'd hire, right? But they're not. They're just grinding the people they have into the ground because it's cheaper for them to do that. And abusing the workers they have because it's cheaper for them to do that, while lying to the public about what the problem is so that they can maintain support so people will keep shopping at their establishments. That's 100% what's happening. And so we need to do away with this idea where they're just like, oh, yeah, and they are playing the victim because it's a game. They're playing, right? They're playing because we're very gullible. We can be convinced of anything, and we've been convinced that, oh, it's a labor shortage. No, it isn't. This is a game. This is a game that they're running on us, right? Stop shopping at these establishments. Just stop shopping there. I need to go get a new office chair, and I was looking online, and the only place that I could get one if I wanted to order it offline would be Amazon, and I'm just not going to. Straight up just not going to. I'm literally going to wait until I can find one in an establishment that's not Amazon, because I refuse. I just straight up, I'm not going to give them $1. I'm not going to give them a dime. I'm not going to give them any of my time. I refuse to engage in overt, obvious wage slave behavior. Like, I'm just no longer interested. Haha, yes, construction workers have zero class consciousness. They are giant bootlickers. I have cringe conversations with my coworkers constantly, but the construction worker trope, hold on, you got another thing, understood by the average intellectual or service worker is that we're genuinely misogynist yeah. Well, and I mean, it is sort of the last place where you can go and not be particularly well educated and make a pretty decent wage doing a necessary job, right? Exactly. If your name isn't the signature on the paycheck, you are working class. I tried to push my union president to recruit all service workers since they have been classified essential during the height of the pandemic when the workers held the balance of power. They didn't. Yeah, why would they? Like, why would they? And I mean, think about like how blatantly obvious this grift is. We suddenly got called heroes and essential workers without a pay raise, without any significant increase to any kind of benefits, without any kind of thing like this. And Canadians are so gulled and gullible that instead of saying, oh, we're essential, well, then we're going to band together and you're going to actually pay us as if we're essential, they just sort of bowed their heads and took it. Like, that's what's happening in Canada today. We're just bowing our heads and taking it. Like, we're not actually going like, wow, wait a minute, this is all fucking bullshit, isn't it? Like, this is all fucking bullshit, isn't it? Like, this whole system, the whole, and there isn't one institution that's redeemable in our society anymore. There isn't one. If somebody could point out to me, what's the redeemable institution? What's an institution that we should actually look at and be like, yeah, that's operating for the benefit of the populace. Yeah, I genuinely believe that that's operating for the benefit of the populace. There isn't a single one. Hey Tom, how you doing, bud? Hey Google, let's play Lynch the Landlords by the Dead Kennedys. Oh man, I would love to, but I'd probably get my stream taken down. Yeah, play that song right meow. I literally saw a job posting today for $12 an hour. That's not even minimum wage. Yeah, you need the right union. Staples, Canadian Tire, and Walmart sell office chairs, but they also exploit the... I know, right? You can't win. You can't win. And you just know that the product you're getting is just shit, right? Like, you know, like I'm gonna end up with a chair that's gonna have like a weird lean on it or something, right? Yeah, the graph showing the rate of union employment versus wealth inequality is a frickin' mirror over the years, for sure, man. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. 795 cases. So we seem to kind of be plateaued at 800 right now. We're not really rocketing to the moon quite yet. Which, I mean, is good news. It is good news that we're not rocketing to the moon. I'm a big fan of not rocketing to the moon. I think that it would be really nice if we stayed below 1,000 cases. It'd be really nice if we just kind of went down. Unionized our office during the pandemic. Look at you. That's baller. Tomfoolery. Yeah, I think that unionization at this stage in the game is the bare minimum, right? Yeah, the old people are vaccinated now. There's something to that too. Yeah, there's something to that too. And it does seem that here in Ontario, we have pretty high levels of vaccination. It's something like 70 to 80% of people are now vaccinated. So that's excellent. We are still getting really, really dumb stories of people. I mean, for God's sakes, the whole anti-mask movement is as dumb as it can be, right? Always be communizing. Exactly, bud. Exactly. Ending the student debt crisis would bring youth to the polls. What? You mean offering people something? You mean offering people something that would have tangible impact on their lives, would actually bring people to go and vote? Holy fucking shit. No way. What? Like, we're just embarrassing at this point, right? Like, it's just embarrassing. Like, how can we possibly continue to plunge our children into this massive debt that guarantees their poverty while insisting we live in a free society? Like, what's fucking wrong with us? Like, the only reason to maintain this system of debt is for the benefit of, oh, guess who? Right? Guess who? Right? These fucking losers who have configured the entire society to benefit their stupid, moronic, sociopathic behavior, so that when we get out of school, we have to sell ourselves to them, right? And do their insipid nonsense bullshit, right? Instead of actually studying, like, hey, let's try to find a cure for cancer. No. That's not profitable, right? You can't make money with a cure for cancer. What are you talking about? We need you to make a new type of face cream, right? We need you to make a new type of. We need to make. You gotta make an even more efficient boner pill, right? Breast cancer. Who gives a fuck about that? Who gives a fuck about that? Get rid of that shit, right? Like, our society is an embarrassment, and this right here is like reason number one. Like, student debt. Are you kidding me? Like, literally, you're saying to all of these people, you have to subserviate yourself completely to this group of people if you want to get educated. And then we scratch our heads and wonder why there's so many fucking dumbasses refusing to get vaccinated. What do you think's happening? Like, what do you think's happening? It's because the dumbasses who are smart enough not to go into fucking debt end up being so fucking stupid that they can't figure out how to get a fucking vaccine. Like, Jesus Christ. This system is irredeemable. Ever seen Elysium? Yeah, Elysium was a good one. And, like, I think it's pretty unlikely that there'll be, like, literally a space station sort of thing, but it's pretty accurate in terms of, like, the wealthy are going to have a place where no one else is allowed to go, where they'll have all of the benefits and all this kind of stuff hoarded for themselves. And what Elysium really showed is that, like, the wealthy had access to this stuff and it didn't cost them anything. Like, when Matt Damon, spoilers, but when Matt Damon finally gets onto the station and, like, releases the bots to go down and, like, offer medical assistance to the people, it didn't cost the people of Elysium anything, right? That's what's so fucking embarrassing about this whole situation, is that if we were to cut this wealth in half and distribute it into the populace, the wealthy wouldn't even notice it was gone. Like, that's how embarrassing this situation has become. That it is straight up an ideological death cult that needs you to prove to them that you deserve to live. Like, fuck all that noise. Fuck all that noise. I think the most, it will be New Zealand bunkers. Yeah, fucking let these guys die in bunkers. Like, I can't imagine a better punishment. I straight up cannot imagine a better punishment for these guys than to live out their last days going mad in a bunker. Like, yeah. Go off to your bunkers, bud. Off to your bunkers. Like, nothing tells you more that these billionaires are stupid, deluded sociopaths than the idea that they've built bunkers. Like, okay, bud. Like, you're a very stupid person. Like, you're really detached from what it is to be a human being and from, like, the real world and what actual life is, right? Your whole life has literally been be in a skyscraper, helicopter over to some other skyscraper, helicopter over to some like yacht or something where you yacht around the ocean pretending like you're a king, right? You've never lived in the world. You don't understand what's happening in the world. You've never actually connected with yourself, right? You're literally just in pursuit of this manic, deluded, non-existent thing called money that must, of course that must be the best thing because it's giving you helicopters and yachts and all these toys. Look at all these toys. But if you take that person who's never actually lived a day in their life, they've literally just gone on this manic, sociopathic death cult quest for infinite money, and you take that person, you lock them in a bunker, how long until they go insane, do you think? Like, how long? For real. How long do you think it's going to take someone like, imagine Jeff Bezos. So he's going to be like 80, right? Locked in a bunker, right? Finally forced into a situation where he actually needs to deal with himself, right? Where he actually needs to like contemplate what life is and contemplate what it is to be a person. How long until he goes insane and just suicides out? I think it happens like 6 months. That's like really generous. And if he made it longer than if any of these billionaires made it longer than 6 months in those conditions, I'd be very, very impressed. I'd be very, very impressed. But they won't, right? They won't. Because, like, being locked in a bunker by yourself or even with other people. Like, and can you imagine? Like, Jeff Bezos goes into a bunker, he brings what, like 5 servants or something and his family? Like, how long until there's, like, a literal war? How long until the servants rise up and just kill them, right? Or Jeff Bezos kills the servants first, and now suddenly you got this bunker, it's got corpses inside of it. There's like a room that nobody goes into, right? Like, and these people will just be insane. Like, they will go insane, and then they will die. I can't think of a better punishment for these guys. And the idea that they're building these prisons themselves with the idea that we'll escape to this prison really, really tells you exactly how detached and idiotic these guys actually are. Like, literally, dude, like, you want to lock yourself in a fucking prison? Okay. I would rather just die. Like, for real. If the option for me was, like, die in some climate change conflagration or lock myself in a bunker, I would be like, I'll just die. This idea that you're going to lock yourself in a bunker and like, oh, that'll save humanity and all this kind of stuff. Jesus fucking Christ. No, thank you. I'm voting NDP. I just think the NDP have the best chance of actually doing some damage. And that's what it's about for me. It's about maximizing the amount of damage done to the capitalist death cult. I just don't think we should pretend like this is a capitalist death cult, right? Like, these guys are offering you nothing but hardship and toil. They're offering you nothing but pain and humiliation so that we can maintain the wealth of this group of people. Like, no. Straight, like, no. Why would we ever think that that's a good idea? Like, why would we ever think that this is a good idea? Okay. But I mean, we're learning from this pandemic that Canadians are pretty stupid. Like, we're very stupid people. It's very hard for us to put shit together. So, let's do some international news, right? I want to talk about China a little bit. Google Maps. My riding lost its Lib incumbent. She didn't run again, so we're solid NDP from the look of things, but so many candidate stops. I went for lunch and bumped into Trudeau's bus. Aaron O'Toole just held his last stop in London at an empty winery. Yeah. Well, and this is what's really interesting about this election, is that it really does seem like now that the anger has diffused itself, right? People throwing gravel and shit at Trudeau and all this. Now it seems as though we've gone back to a simmer, and there's no like hurrahing, right? There's no like rah-rah. Like there's none of that. Nobody is experiencing like a big rah-rah moment. Everybody has just kind of experienced this like shoulder shrug and like right? Because people are fucking fed up with these guys. I know I am. One thing I'm really tired of in mainstream legacy media, the sociopath media, is the constant focus on what politicians say and no attention to what they do. Yeah, that's on purpose. Like, that's on purpose. You can see what that has done here in the U.S. Did you catch Jugmeat and Hassan Piker? No. Hassan Piker. Nope. And I don't see it's making, like, kind of news. No, but I mean, like, look, it's just difficult for people to be excited about this election because everybody knows, like, this is the outcome. Like, it's literally just going to be the same. So, rah, wave a flag, right? More of this, right? More of this. All right, I want to talk about China. So, interesting things have been happening. Big interesting thing that happened recently was that Australia, the UK, and America formed a military alliance in order to continue the containment strategy against China. This is actually a really big deal. This is actually a really, really big deal because the question mark has always been in Australia, which way are they going to jump, right? And Australia has kind of been crossing their fingers and hoping that they could just skim under the radar and nobody was going to say to them, like, hey, you need to pick a side. So Australia has picked a side, and that side is with America. That the United States, the UK, and Australia have formed a military alliance unto itself in order to contain China. And so that what that's going to mean is it's going to turn Australia into a larger military base for the United States to, dick around in this region, right? And I think it won't be too much longer until we actually start to see some military conflagrations on these island systems. The Americans are well known for doing this kind of shit, so why wouldn't they do it now? They know that they can't directly invade China, but they are also doing stuff like selling arms to the Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam. And right after the failure of making much closer Afghanistan into a military base, well, and as this is happening, China and Iran are tightening their military alliance. Xi just recently said that he wants to get Iran into a straight-up military allegiance and tighten it up. And I believe that that's coming because of the connection with Afghanistan. And that China and Afghanistan, like China is straight up already sending infrastructure and sending wealth into Afghanistan as we're talking now. Like it's literally the as the United States is walking out, China is walking in, right? And so as Afghanistan gets built up, the connection to Iran is right here, right? And this is actually very threatening to India, right? That India is actually not a big fan of China. It doesn't like that China is gaining this power. It doesn't like that China is becoming a powerhouse as its neighbor. Because historically, right, once a nation becomes large and powerful, they start to exert their will on other nations. And a place like India, which is currently ruled by a fascist, an outright fascist, of course is not going to be a fan of the socialist communist nation that's on its border, right? And so honestly, I am of the opinion that China what is going to happen in Afghanistan is going to be another economic miracle. It's going to just be like and it's going to happen fast. It's going to be about 5 years, I think. And Afghanistan is going to have have built up its infrastructure. It's going to be part of the world economy. It's going to be looking good, right? and its connection into Iran, it's just going to make it look a lot better, and that's going to make places like Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, right, literally the neighbors of this place, go, yeah, I could go for that. I could go for that, right? And the Chinese strategy is obviously to make this area wealthy. Is obviously to make this area wealthy and make this area stable for the first time in like 100 fucking years, right? Because China understands what it's like to go through 100 years of totally getting shit on, right? They had what do they call it? It's the 100 years of poverty, or the 100 years of, I'm completely blanking on the name of it, but like they understand what it's like to be shit on for a long period of time and then go through the hard work of actually building a nation. And it looks to me like they're taking all of the lessons that they've learned about how to become a prosperous nation, and they're going to make this area prosperous, right? And it's and that's going to extend China's influence into the Middle East in a serious way. And hopefully, I mean, we know that they're connecting with Laos and Vietnam and Thailand and Cambodia and all of this, right? We know that China is trying to extend its influence. We know, but they're not doing it by bombing people. So it creates like a really weird relationship in the Western mind, right? It's very difficult for us to believe or understand a society that can spread its influence into other nations' borders without military force, right? Yeah, it's weird capitalist India's cheap labor doesn't improve the conditions of people, but communist China's cheap labor did. I wonder fucking why. Yeah, I wonder fucking why. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, exactly. And as time moves forward, China is going to become even larger and even more powerful, and it's going to be doing it through negotiation, essentially, through negotiation and persuasion, right? Like, and it's not very difficult to persuade Afghanistan to get connected to the Belt and Road Initiative, guys. Like, that was a pretty easy, like, literally China shows up and goes like, hey, do you want to connect to the Belt and Road Initiative? And Afghanistan was like, yes, please. Like, that was the conversation. And it's not, it's a no-brainer to think that, like, China's going to connect from the Kashgar Prefecture right through the Wakhan Corridor. That's going to connect into Kabul. We know that the forces within Afghanistan who are fighting against the Taliban now, the former leadership of Afghanistan that was propped up by the United States, we know that they're aware of this because they're trying to take over these roads, right? They're trying to take over this area. And of course, I think the Taliban is just going to make peace with them and turn them into like viceroys and shit. And then a rail from Kabul into Mashhad, that Mashhad goes to Tehran, and then Tehran goes up into Georgia or Ankara, right? This is no-brainer shit. This is no-brainer shit, and it's an enormous threat. It's an enormous threat to the United States, whose goal, of course, in the region is to expand Israel into the Greater Israel Project, right? To take over the Suez Canal, take over the oil fields that exist in Jordan, Syria, and Iraq, create a new border around the Greater Israel, which is what they'll call it. And of course, they'll keep trying to eradicate the Arab forces around there. And this is considered nation building, right? That's what's so hilarious about the United States and the capitalist simps, is that if you commit a genocide and actually drop bombs on people, that's considered rational nation building. But if you just connect people into infrastructure projects, oh, they're so imperialist, right? Oh my God, what a disaster! China, we got to watch out for them. They're building railways, and so this alliance now that exists between Australia, UK, and America essentially means that this area is going to turn into a clusterfuck. It's just straight up going to turn into a clusterfuck. Like, there's no other way to describe it. Like, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, even Taiwan have, like, weird relationships with America. They've got, like, a yes-no kind of thing. But, like, America has, like, committed genocides against the Indonesian people, the Philippine people, right? Like there have been massive conflagrations in this region because of the Americans already. But I think people are very concerned about the power of China, and that, like, and it is completely possible that China just loses its mind, right? Like, it's completely possible that China just goes the way of the United States, starts bombing the shit out of people, right? Like, it's completely possible. I just don't know why they would. Like, but again, like, nation states are not necessarily rational, right? And then in the midst of all of this, as I'm talking about China, never forget that China and Russia have a very strong military alliance that they are continuing to tighten up on. That they actually have a currency that they're starting to put into the world, the renminbi. China and Russia work very hard to maintain an understanding of friendship with one another, which also I think is very confusing to the Western world. Like, they genuinely believe that China must be exerting some sort of force or fear on Russia in order to get this, because they don't understand a relationship that isn't based on cruelty and fear. Whereas China and Russia, basically their relationship has been just like talking to each other, right? And it's been that way since World War II, right? That the Russians and the Chinese were always sort of bros, right? That as the Chinese Communist Party is operating within the borders of China, well, fucking what was happening here? It was the Soviet Union, wasn't it? Both of them communists, and you should take a look at some of the Chinese Russian propaganda during that period of time. It was all about fraternity and brotherhood and how we're working together and like all that kind of shit. There was no propaganda coming out of Soviet Union about how China's a threat or any of this, and there was none of that happening from China to Russia. So for the last like 100 years, the Russians and the Chinese have looked at each other as brothers, as within a brotherhood. That they, yeah, sure, we might not look the same, but what does that matter, right? We're all working through this, and we're all trying to get through this together, and we should work together in cooperation. And that, of course, in American lingo, is terrorism, right? Cooperation is terrorism, that sort of nonsense thing. Yep, USSR was instrumental in ending the Japanese occupation. Exactly, right? Exactly. And so these two countries are, if not in lockstep with one another, they understand. Like, the Chinese understand that if the United States is to invade Russia and destroy it, which has always been on the docket from the West, that China is going to get involved, right? And the same is true now of Iran, probably Afghanistan, right? That, like, the United States is losing more and more power in the world stage as the Chinese expand their influence and start to say, okay, you can't invade this place. You can't invade this place. Like, you can't invade these places without us getting involved. And that's what the United States doesn't like. Because for the last, like, since World War II at least, the United States has been walking around as if they own the place, right? Destroying defenseless nations, beating people up, stealing their resources, right? And along comes China and it's saying, like, no, you can't do that anymore, bro. Like, you can't just walk into this place anymore. Yet the U.S. wet soap in a fist foreign policy, yeah, it's just getting really cringy, you know. And what is, like, right now the Biden administration is satisfied with just bombing Syria and Somalia, right? Like, really, you know, taking the small scale targets and really picking on, like, bombing Syrian oil fields to jack up the price of oil, right? Getting into Somalia to deal with the Muslim Brotherhood strongholds that exist there so that they continue the Yemen and Oman genocides, right? And all of that is being done to ensure the power of Saudi Arabia stays in place. Like, that's the whole point, is that if Saudi Arabia were to suddenly fall to some sort of internal uprising, well, that's the end of the U.S. in influence in the area, right? Like, they don't really have allies. Their ally is Israel, and Israel's not really an ally. It's just a military base for the United States. Hey, Branwyn, how you doing? So if Saudi Arabia were to fall from some kind of civilian uprising like we saw in Egypt, right? It'd be a massive problem for the United States. So what do? Right? They round up all the Muslim Brotherhood, right? Get them into Yemen, get them into Oman, put them into these concentration camps. cause huge problems. The Somalian pirates that are actively attempting to help these people and actively attempting to continue the pursuit of the destruction of Saudi Arabia, or the Saudi princes anyway. Like, that's the goal, right? That's the goal. That's the fight that's happening here. And so the United States comes in, blows these places up, coup, right? All the classic stuff. All the classic stuff. So it's just the question mark now that the United States is withdrawn from Afghanistan, is what are they going to destroy next, right? Because they are at sort of the end of the plan, right? That the plan was always to destroy Iraq. What was it? It was Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Oman, Sudan, if I'm not mistaken. Egypt, they never really needed to invade because Egypt was always in their pocket. Syria, right? Syria. And that's essentially what they did, right? Like, they went in, they destroyed these places, and well, now that they've destroyed them, what's the next goal, right? And the next goal is probably to just, like, officially expand the borders of Israel, right? Officially just, like, cut it through, expand it. But somebody like Joe Biden is not going to want to do that. Djibouti seems like an important place to control. Djibouti. Djibouti, Djibouti, Djibouti. Why is it not just popping up? Why is it just not popping up? Come on, Djibouti. Djibouti, Djibouti. Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, just like a small little parcel here that, and of course this all connects in with the Suez Canal, right? That, like, you want to have control over the Suez Canal, that Somali pirates can cause problems, Djibouti can cause problems, right? Like, you can cause problems through the Gulf of Aden, right? And that's true of, like, Eritrea, Ethiopia. The United States has threatened to overthrow and destroy all of these places, right? Because the goal is to cut off Chinese access to the Suez Canal. And if they do that, then that's going to force the Chinese to send their boats around the Horn, right? It's going to really lengthen things, cause a lot of problems for the Chinese. And this is a big reason why the Chinese are like, well, we've got the Belt and Road Initiative, right? Still wondering what the future concerning petrodollar and global warming. It can't last, man, but the U.S. keeps doubling down, Biden approving oil drilling, etc. Yeah. And, like, as a big reason why they invaded Iraq when they did was because Saddam Hussein was starting to say, he was starting to trade, rather, in euros. He was starting to trade oil in euros instead of in the petrodollar. This can't be done, right? This, as far as the U.S. is concerned, this cannot be done. But now you've got a very powerful force in the Chinese-Russian alliance coming together with the renminbi, and they're trading in oil, right, on the renminbi. It's going to cause significant problems. And the problems that the United States is facing at this stage in the game, like, right now, DJ, I'm discussing China and the United States and the whole foreign conflagration that's going on because I like to, and it's fun to talk about, and it's interesting. And it has an impact on us, right? Like, we got to remember, like, the liberals are selling weapons to all of this, right? That the liberals, what they do is they sell weapons to Saudi Arabia, and then Saudi Arabia uses those weapons in order to enact the genocides that they have going around on their borders in order to protect themselves from an internal coup, right? That's what Saudi Arabia is it has always been working to prevent. That if an internal coup, like if rebel forces, the Muslim Brotherhood likely, were to actually take over Saudi Arabia, that would essentially be a death knell for the United States' power in the region, right? That they have not done a good job convincing anybody in the region that they are worth a goddamn, that they're just like a monster that's in there. And and if Saudi Arabia were to fall, Israel would be next. Like, the Muslim Brotherhood's goal, like, stated goal from day one, is the wholesale destruction of Israel. And, like, that's a nuclear power, right? And the Muslim Brotherhood's suddenly going to get control over nuclear bombs? Yeah, I don't think the States is probably a big fan of that. I don't think the States is a big fan of that. Well, I think I've reached the end of talking about that. I mean, so the question becomes, like, quite seriously, where is the United States going to invade next? Like, what's the next stage of this, right? That they're through the destruction. Like, they've destroyed everything they can destroy. They can't destroy anything else, right? That's a big reason they withdrew from Afghanistan, because it's like there's nothing left. There's nothing left to destroy. And I actually think the whole endeavor of them being in the Middle East and destroying the whole thing failed, right? That it failed ultimately. And it failed because they could never get into Iran. That was fundamentally the linchpin for the whole operation. That they went into Iraq, they destroyed Iraq. They went into Afghanistan, they destroyed Afghanistan. They had their ally in Turkey, right? They were destroying Syria, this whole region here, so that they could expand their power up in this area. Their ally in Saudi Arabia is here. And they built a bunch of military bases, and they're planning an invasion into Iran, and then Iran won, played ball with the international community, i.e. the white community, right? It de-escalated its weapons programs. It de-escalated its war effort. It said, we are not building nuclear bombs. They allowed UN inspectors in. Everybody took a look and agreed, yep, these guys are not pursuing a nuclear weapons strategy, which was always the narrative that the United States was using to push into Iran. And then Iran started to partner up with China, and that was it. That was it. The U.S. could not invade Iran in wholesale, gigantic ways because China is sitting there going like, no, that's our buddy. Like, if you go in there, we're going to fuck with you, right? And so the United States, and because the United States never really had control of Afghanistan and Iraq, right, because they never actually truly had a footing that actually mattered, they could never push into Iran, and they could never get Iran. And that ultimately is the failing. Like, if they don't have Iran, if Iran isn't destroyed, then they can't really do anything in the region. They can't really get anything done. Iran is large and influential, right? Like, it's not fucking zero. I think it will be a permanent Cold War with China as a delaying tactic while capitalists increasingly move their money out of the country, maybe. Yeah, I think Bumbleguppy, I think that's pretty accurate, right? Like that I mean, it's obvious that the capitalists are abandoning ship, right? Like it's pretty clear. Like they're not investing in America. They're not taking their money and investing it in anything. They're not taking their money and investing it in Canada. They're not doing any of that. They're just shipping it into offshore accounts that live in like Luxembourg or something, right? And so they're just jamming their money into these like little, where the fuck is Luxembourg? Luxembourg, come on. It's probably there it is. Yep, so small it wasn't showing up on the map. They're just jamming everything into Luxembourg, right? And just like kind of crossing their fingers and hoping that the grift will just continue. But like, here, I'm gonna take a quick break, get myself some more water, make sure my dog has some peanut butter, hit the washroom. I'll be right back, and then I'm gonna talk about the Federal Reserve, okay? Because I just recently rewatched something that I think is important that everybody knows. And not everybody does understand this. I'm going to talk about it. So give me a minute. Chair stream. Do I have a video? I do not. Chair stream. Chair stream. Chair stream. Chair stream. Chair stream. So, the Federal Reserve in both the UK as well as the United States is the bank that operates in the government, but people don't understand that it is a bank. The Federal Reserve that exists in the United States is a bank that is privately owned, that it literally prints money out of nothing, right, and issues that money to the government as it requires it at interest. This arrangement, if you like to call it that, is ensures the maximum amount of damage and the entire wage enslavement of the United States to the petrodollar system, and we end up being beholden to completely unaccountable private interests. And we're talking about like familial wealth at this point. This isn't like institutional wealth. This is literally like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, right? These families own the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve cannot be audited, right? This is why you had figures like Ron Paul talking about audit the Fed, right? This is why every so often you get somebody saying audit the Fed, because the Fed can't be audited. No congressperson, no senator, no president is allowed to go into the Federal Reserve and find out what's going on, right? That's the legal system. That's how it works. That the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Morgans, these families, they got a leader into the White House, I believe it was Wilson, who was sympathetic to them. And while over the Christmas vacation, over Christmas break, they passed legislation secretively in order to erect this Federal Reserve Bank. And the whole thing is like, on the face of it, like, it's called the Federal Reserve, but it's privately held. They passed it secretively over Christmas with a president who they obviously bribed to do exactly that, right? And that's just a continuation of attempts that they had attempted to do in the past. I think it was Andrew Jackson. They attempted to erect a private banking system like this in the past, and Andrew Jackson destroyed it, managed to survive an assassination attempt, destroyed the private banking system, and said on his deathbed that his greatest achievement was that he killed the bank. And the system that we're operating under now is this system of privatized debt peonage, that these families create money out of nothing, to the point where we actually have a quote from one of them. His name was Nathan Rothschild, and he said, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who writes his laws, or writes its laws." And we don't because we don't have control of our own currency, and so we end up in a situation. Where so for every dollar that gets created, we've got to pay back $1 and a little bit of money, right? The interest on it. Well, where does that come from? The truth is that it doesn't come from anywhere. We can't actually pay these loans back. It's not possible to pay these loans back. And so this creates a situation where much of our taxes go towards paying out this loan that we can never actually pay back, so that a small class of literally families can just keep existing for no reason, right? It's not much different from a monarchy. It's not much different from that kind of arrangement. And that's embedded in the United States and the UK financial system. And of course, it's infected Canada as well. And so, like, this needs to be done away with. Like, it absolutely needs to be done away with. Like, when we talk about the pointless, worthless capitalists, the Federal Reserve is, like, number one. Like, there's nothing more worthless than this. Like, why do these people have control of the issuance of our currency? Like, why? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And yet, it's how things have been for, like, 100 years. And I can't imagine why everything's going to shit. Hey, Demand Better, how you doing, bud? I think we are looking at a tripolar world next with the Chinese neocolonialism. Is what China is doing neocolonialism? Why are you calling it neocolonialism? What are they doing that convinces you it's neocolonialism? Talking to their neighbors? Erecting trade agreements? That's not really colonialism. Versus European neocolonialism. I mean, Europe is just kind of dead in the water at this stage in the game. Like they're just so calcified in their own shit. Like it's more likely that they're going to fall into an internal war than which I mean is classic, right? That's classic European behavior. Like I don't know who exactly the center of that would be. I mean, there's always Germany, right? But they're falling for the same problems that exist in the UK and exist in the United States, which is that unelected bodies have major control over their currency, right? And so everything's just calcifying. Like, I think it's more likely that these places balkanize, right? I think it's more likely that the United States actually balkanizes, right? And I mean, North America, like the United States. Hold on. I got a pleading pug, pleading pug. I actually do genuinely think that the most likely outcome is a balkanization of the United States. I think that people are starting to wake up to the fact that the federal government is not acting in their interests, like at all, like 0%. And big independence movements are starting to crop up in places like California and Texas and throughout the southern states. Like, I think it is likely that the United States is faced with a Brexit moment, right? And I think that it could be California, but it could also be Texas. That would happen first. And once the balkanization of the United States happens, like then you're going to see big capital flight. Then you're going to see the capitalists really heading for the hills, right? Because they're certainly not going to invest into a country that's literally balkanizing, right? And similar things can actually happen with the EU, right? That the EU could start to just break up again, right? The EU itself was actually a major experiment, right? It's a massive experiment. The idea of taking the European continent and federating it, like, interesting idea, right? But like, there are so many different ideas and so many different cultures and so many different things going on. Yeah, but what would the Association of Mature American Citizens have to say about all that? Yeah, that's a real good point. Like, the reason why the white folk are so scared is because their shit is starting to break up. Like, their financial systems are starting to fail. Like, they're not able to actually pay their own bills, and their entire idea of blowing everybody they meet up, like blowing all the non-white people up, is starting to fail. Like, Afghanistan is a massive, major, complete and total failure. They spent $2 trillion, which, like, if you're like rich white folk, it actually isn't a failure, because who got that $2 trillion? Oh, the rich white folk, right? But that money isn't going anywhere, right? That monetary systems only work if things go in a cycle, right? That it goes from the issuer, government, right, to the lender, to actually who lends it out, to actually do something, right? And then in the doing of something, that money gets taxed back to the issuer so that the cycle can continue, right? But that's not what's happening. And so the system is destined to collapse. It's destined to collapse. And at this point, I don't think there's anything the United States could genuinely do to stop it. Like, I don't think that there's, like, obviously there's stuff they could do, but it would all require the confrontation of capital. And they're not going to do that. They're not going to confront capital. They're not interested in that. And so what that means is that the last resort of all of these people, and this is true in the United States, this is true in the EU, is to leave. Is to just be like, well, if you're not actually, like, doing anything with that wealth other than creating little Palestinian corpses and shit, no, I'm not going to pay that tax anymore, right? I'm not going to do that. And once the revolutionary spirit takes over in the United States and it starts to balkanize, that's going to snowball, right? Like that was the big concern with the UK and Brexit, right? That the UK voted to exit and that there was going to be this big snowball effect that happened. Hasn't really taken hold quite yet, but I think that's largely because the EU got fucking scared of that and started to capitulate. Along a lot of lines. That the EU is fighting against like Spain for certain rights and Italy for certain things and Germany and all this. And then finally just stopped doing that because they realized, oh shit, this whole thing could go away. You're absolutely right that the independent capitalist controls currency is calcifying Europe and US. And China's main advantage is their public banks. Honestly, China's main advantage is that they are a country that's working for the interest of their own people. Like, that really is their advantage. That they are a country that has decided that caring about their own people is what matters the most. That if what we are doing in the world does not translate to the lived experience of our own citizens, then we are facing disaster. Like, China's a 4,000-year-old civilization, right? Like, it has massive reach and root into who it is as a people. It also has a significant advantage because if you are Chinese, you are Chinese, right? Like, if you are Chinese, you're Chinese. If you're in Beijing, you don't really have like those filthy Kunming people, right? Like, you don't really have, like, I mean, I'm sure that a certain degree of this exists, as it exists in all society, but it's not the same as what we're experiencing here in the United States. Bumbleguppy, earlier, right? I think you said this kind of tongue-in-cheek, and that's fine, but you say you're from Oregon, and then you say, I'll never, ever acknowledge those filthy Missourians, right? Well, that shit exists in heavy ways in the United States. The amount of cultural shitting on that the Southerners experience, right? The amount of absolute just like totally dumping, and people from New York dump on people from California and people from California, like, so there's no actual unity, right? And because there's also a racial diversity that exists, the United States has so many fault lines in it that it's making no attempt to figure out. It's making no attempt to sort of figure out, how do we heal these fault lines? How do we actually unify as a people outside of just pandering to it, right? Meanwhile, the Chinese are like, we are Han Chinese, right? Most of China is one race. Most of China is one people who are all connecting with one another on this idea of, hey, this place should improve and we should do better, right? And it is. And they are, right? At this stage of the game, that's just an objective statement. And to me, that's their big advantage, is that they're unified culturally, racially, and soon economically, right? That the economic systems that China is erecting, I was talking to somebody before who was saying, like, well, the workers' rights in China are not so great. And I thought about that, and I went like, well, that's true, but unlike our system of confrontational capital, where if you have to have a union that fights against capitalists, and there's this constant fighting arrangement that's constant, right? So that the union side can actually get some workers' rights, right? Well, the Chinese system is actually more like that, where at the bottom you do have workers who, yes, they're not working in the greatest of conditions, but literally they went from being like dust farmers out in rural nowhere who gives a fuckistan, and they get into these factories, first generation factories, and they're all working towards a goal, and they know it's hard, they know it's difficult, but they understand that they're sacrificing something so that the next generation will improve, right? Because the structure looks like this, where there is like a conversation and an ascension onto it, and it's more like a war effort, right? That once you understand that what's happening in China is viewed by the Chinese people themselves as closer to a war effort than it is like this bickering conversation between capitalists and unionists, it starts to make a lot more sense, that the Chinese structure of government is erected in such a way so that it always is responding back to what the people need, right? The National People's Congress is literally mandated to constantly be asking and figuring out what's going on in the people by elected officials. Each province elects their own official. So it's like it's this constant unfolding growth that's happening in a unified way in China at all times. Whereas here in the United States and Canada, we're constantly at war with each other. We're constantly at each other's necks over a ton of different issues, right? We're constantly fighting with one another to the point where it's embedded in our political system. In China, it's a one-party system, and of course there are factions because humans live and exist. But here in Canada, it's literally like different organizations. And when those different organizations take over, they spend the first half of their term obliterating anything that the other guy did. And so we're constantly like just in this calcified state where we're breaking everything apart constantly. Where like one president will get in and build some solar panels and the next one will come in and tear them down. Right? No, and I see what you're saying, Victini. I don't want to pretend as though there aren't, like, racism is ubiquitous. Like, you can never get away with this, but the reality is that the Han population that exists in China is the majority population, and not a small majority. It's not like a 51%. It's like 80% of the country, right? That creates that smooths things out for a country, without a doubt. And of course they have minority groups in there, right? Like, let's not pretend. As much as I stand here and I will tell you, like, there's no evidence for a Uyghur genocide, like, the Uyghur people still experience their fair share of racism. Like, that's obvious, right? That's always going to be the case because humans are involved. Right? And I won't pretend otherwise. I'm not going to stand here and be like, yeah, the Chinese are incapable of experiencing racism. No, like, that's obviously false. But like, the lines that exist along, like the lines that have been created because of that are less harsh, right? Like, in China, for God's sakes, like, China is currently involved in going to Xinjiang, which is largely minority owned, right, minority controlled, right, and they're funneling money into this place in order to raise the quality of life for groups like the Uyghurs, right? They're currently involved in that kind of project. Is there a project like that going on to the black population in the United States? No, and in fact, it's quite the opposite, right? You have redlining, you have like the absolute, based completely on racial lines, the segregation of people, the expulsion of people from the society based on racial lines, right? From the project of prosperity. So it's like, the United States not only has more fault lines in it, but it's actually working to make those fault lines worse, while simultaneously pretending like they care. So I want to be very clear. Obviously, there's going to be racism in China. Like, obviously. And why is that the case? Because they're people. Because they're humans, right? And racism and being a human are like us, right? All I'm saying is that there's less opportunity, right? There's much less opportunity. And it seems as though the systemic level of it is much, much diminished as well. Did you see the headline, Amazon's new factory towns will lift the working class? Yeah. They're literally just putting buzzwords together now, right? Amazon's new factory towns will benefit for you, right? Like, any kind of connection they can make to try to convince people that these are actually good, when, like, I don't really see, like, how will it lift the working class? Like, how? It'll lift the working class by letting them have subsistence wages and waste their lives sending packages places. Yeah, my parents were in Urumqi in 2018, witnessed racism against Uyghur Muslims. My grandfather was put in a long-term care home and got in a physical fight with his roommate because he was in the wrong village. Yeah. I'm not sure you can portray China as a unified country without racism, tribalism. Just because the Han Chinese are the overwhelming doesn't mean... I'm not trying to claim it's a utopia. I'm just trying to claim that, like... Have you heard of Dil Raba, the Uyghur superstar, actress, pop star? Look her up. It's not a genocide. This woman is a superstar all over China and abroad. Well, and there are literal there are Uyghur politicians, for God's sakes. Like, there's Uyghur politicians, for God's sakes. Like, the more you learn about the Uyghur genocide, right? The more you learn about the history of Xinjiang and of what's going on in that region, the more absurd it becomes. It just becomes more and more absurd. And again, I'm not trying to say that there isn't strife and racial like tension. It's just less at the forefront, right? Like it's like the difference between not liking grapefruits and grapefruits being like a major allergy, right? Like you both are not going to eat grapefruits. It's just one guy literally dies if he eats it, and the other guy is just like, no, thank you. That's kind of an odd analogy, eh? I just kind of pulled that one out of the air, just being like, grapefruits. Let's talk. Part of wielding power is rubbing people's faces in the dirt. They know factory towns won't help anyone. It's a power move. Yeah, it's like, especially Amazon, I've noticed, they've got to be doing stuff knowing that they're pissing people off. Like, Bezos kind of had to know that shooting that rocket into space was going to piss a lot of people off. He had to know, right? Like, he's not walking around. Do you think he's walking around thinking everyone thinks he's great? Do you think that's the case? I mean, he's got to know. In late August, China's Supreme Court ruled that the 996 work culture is illegal and will be cracking down on companies that continue to use it. Yeah, and that's important. First of all, hey, Dan Boxes, how you doing? But it is important to remember that, like, China, like us, like all cultures, is in a state of evolution. It's in a state of growth. And what trajectory is it on, right? That's what matters the most. What's its trajectory? Well, right now it's got a government that's actively attempting to make things better for its own citizens, right? Is it always going to be successful doing that? Obviously not. They're people, right? Is it always going to make the right decision? Obviously not. They're people, right? But what's the objective? What's the goal? The goal is always to make things better for their own people. Are we doing that? Do we genuinely believe our political class is attempting to make things better for us? Yes, no, right? I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe for a minute that these guys are trying to make things better for us. We literally have, like, former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan standing in front of the Congress saying that the goal of the capitalist class is to make workers desperate. That's the goal. Like, they're obviously trying to make things worse for us. They're obviously trying, and why? So that they can do this. Like, it's obvious at this point. Like, the people who wander into this place pretending like capitalism actually works are embarrassing. Like, I'm actually starting to get to the point where I've got to start to, like, I got to start entering those conversations like, oh, bud, like, with a little bit more compassion, actually. Because who at this stage in the game is more deluded and more in denial than somebody walking around pretending like this system of capital is actually working? Is there anybody more in denial than somebody walking around pretending like the system of capital is actually working? I don't think so. Like, I think that you're on the same level as, like, the flat earthers or, like, Bigfoot or, like, the moon landing was fake. Like, I think the greatest conspiracy theory that exists today is the conspiracy theory that says that the capitalist system is working. Like, that's some straight up flat earther shit right there. Ugh. We will don our chains willingly, late stage capitalism. Yeah, socialism is the means to achieve communism. And like, we've never been there yet, so it will be unknown. We can only do better than capitalism. Yeah, like, things can only improve, right? Well, that's not true. We could revert back to feudalism. I actually make the argument we've already done that. Like, we sell ourselves to people we don't meet. And if you want to go sell yourself to somebody else, you're welcome to. But all the billionaires own everything, right? Like, they own everything. Somebody like David Thompson is exactly what I'm talking about. David Thompson doesn't actually own anything. He just owns 10% of everything, right? So you're always selling yourself to David Thompson, right? It doesn't matter what you sell yourself to. You're always selling yourself to David Thompson in some regard. And all the wealthy are getting to that point. So David Thompson will own 10% of anything. The Weston family will own another 10%. Like Joseph Tsai will own another 10%. And they all layer up until finally it's just billionaires who own everything. So you literally cannot sell yourself to somebody new, because they all own the same stuff and they all own everything, right? That's the system. Flat Earth theory is like flat Kim Kardashian theory. Dave. That's funny, dude. I like that. That's funny. Kim Kardashian. I'm actually kind of in love with Kim Kardashian, I gotta tell you. Her interview that she did with David Letterman really made me turn a corner on Kim Kardashian. Because, like, I think it's dumb what we've done. Like, I think it's dumb that we've made her as popular as she is, right? I think it's dumb that she's just, like, this icon, right? Like, and that her opinion matters at all. Like, I think that that's dumb. But, like, Kim Kardashian herself seems like she wanted to become famous and be an influencer, and she did it. What's wrong with that? Like, what's wrong with that? Right? It's just sort of weird that people know who Kim Kardashian is, but they don't know who their, like, elected representative is. That's what's weird, you know? I feel like if we were all, like, politically astute and class conscious and, like, really fighting forward, and we knew who our elected officials are, and we knew who our owners were and all this kind of stuff, while simultaneously being like Kim Kardashian, I would be like, yeah, all right. But it's because I think that's where the absurdity comes in, is that we're so disconnected from our class consciousness that, like, someone like Kim Kardashian is actually more influential to us than our elected representatives are, right? And we know more about Kim Kardashian than we do about our owners, right? That's where the absurdism lives. So, like, if we knew more about our owners and we also knew Kim Kardashian, I think it would be less absurd. But it's just the weird, like, cult level, right? Like, I don't really get... Like, you listen to... Like, everybody is like... what's his name? Her husband. Oh, my God. Kanye West. Everyone's like, Kanye West is, like, a genius. And, like, the only reason I think they say that is because he says it. You know? I'm like, I mean, he's a rapper, all right. Like, he's making music, I guess. But, like, genius? Like, what about him is, like, genius, do you think? Supply side, trickle down, bootstraps in the gulch. Where's the bottom? There are no birds. Flat Earth. There are no birds. What? What? First of all, what's Galt's Gulch? That sounds fun. Galt's Gulch. Often identified as one of the more popular utopias of the 20th century. Oh yeah. The name of the utopia in Ayn Rand's got the stretch. Can you tell? I tried to actually read Atlas Shrugged. I did. I sat down and I actually was like, I'm going to read this. And I started to read it, and it was so bad. Like, it was so tediously bad that I had to stop almost immediately. I was like, I would rather just not know the fine details of this story than put myself through the torture of actually reading this hack. Like, it's just hack work. Like, it's not good. It's straight up not good. They recharge by sitting on power lines. Oh, that explains it. Why else would they sit on power lines, dude? You did it, bud. I remember fairly recently, I walked out and there's like a power pole right up here, and there was a squirrel, no fucking word of a lie, a squirrel, like, frozen, it is dead, biting one of the power. He literally was like, and he's just frozen like that, having bit one of the power cables. Just like, I wish I had taken a picture of it, you know? I was just like, that is fucking horrific. Just this dead squirrel, just like... It made me wonder, like, dude, why are you biting that? What are you doing, bud? But, like, what possible... How could he possibly know, right? Just literally a squirrel just being a squirrel, and then all of a sudden, and he's gone. Like, you made me choke on my food with the Kanye comment. What, do you think he's a genius, Aga? Are you big on Kanye West? Like, I don't know. Anytime I listen to his music, I'm like, yeah, this is pretty standard boilerplate shit, right? I just don't see, like, where's the genius? Like, where's the moment where he's connecting dots that have not hitherto been connected, right? Like, where's the moment where I'm like, whoa, my mind is blown, dude. Like, he just seems fairly boilerplate to me, you know? And I just don't think I understand what the hoopla is all about with him. Near as I can tell, the hoopla is that he says he is a genius, and we all kind of just go along with that. Yeah, I've never heard him say anything that's worth listening to. Like, what interesting, like, informing thing has he ever said? Like, the only thing the Bolsheviks did wrong was educating Ayn Rand. That's funny, dude. That's funny. Oh, of course it's Sartre. Fucking Sartre. What a baller. Yeah, and like, I don't know. When Kanye West dies, like, everyone's gonna go like, oh, Kanye, and there'll be like a moment where we all listen to his music again, and then we'll all forget about him, right? Like, I don't even think that he's particularly interesting. Like, anytime I tune into Kanye, I'm just like, okay, bro, like, do you have anything of value to really add to the conversation? Do you have anything really interesting to add to the conversation? The answer is usually no. I'm just like, okay. Like, you know what? That isn't true. I retract this statement on one point, because I just had a remembering moment. Do you guys remember when Kanye West was standing beside Mike Myers and they were talking about Katrina, and he looked into the camera and it was obviously unscripted, and he just said, George Bush doesn't care about black people? Yeah, that was great. You know what? That was great. When Kanye did that shit, that was great. I'm straight up gonna retract my statement based on that alone. Just the idea that Kanye West stood up in the middle of Katrina and said on national television, George Bush does not care about black people. Yeah, that was good. That was a good moment. Yeah, that was pretty baller. Yeah, you gotta give him that one. You do gotta give him that one. Does that make him a fucking genius? Probably not, but like, that was pretty sick. But again, like, I don't actually know that much about Kanye West and the Kardashians, honestly. All I know is that they're, like, culturally influential for whatever reason. Yeah, I mean, if you repeat something a lot to the masses, even if it's laughably false, somehow eventually it becomes true. Yeah, propaganda 101. Well, and the procedure of that is actually really interesting, right? Which is that, like, we are fundamentally monkeys, right? Like, we're fundamentally just monkeys. And so if a big billboard is screaming something at you, your initial instinct is to believe it, because you know that there's, like, a lot of energy that's gone into this, right? And so even if you're skeptical of it, what's being bombarded at you, right, you think the guy beside you believes it, right? So even if you don't believe it, you're still going to espouse it because you want to be in the in crowd of the people who believe this, right? Not realizing, of course, that everybody is skeptical of it, or everybody has their own position on it, but everybody believes that everybody else believes it. This is why what we're doing in terms of the like bombarding with this massive misinformation and propaganda shit is dangerous, right? You can't actually fucking get anything done, right? Because you're constantly needing to check in with everybody around you at all times, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. 100th monkey phenomenon, look it up, sure. 100th monkey phenomenon. 100th monkey effect. The 100th monkey effect is a hypothetical phenomenon in which a new behavior or idea is spread rapidly by unexplained means from one group to all related groups once a critical number of members of one group exhibit the new behavior or acknowledge the new idea. The behavior was said to propagate even to groups that are physically separated and have no apparent means of communicating to one another. Since it was first popularized, the effect has been discredited in many cases of research. One of the primary factors in the spread of this concept is that many authors quote secondary, tertiary, or post-tertiary sources that have themselves been misrepresented in original observations. So the 100th monkey effect is itself a 100th monkey effect, right? That it itself has been discredited, but the idea has propagated. That's a bit much. Yeah, Ayn Rand she's awful. She's not a good author. Like, that's the thing that kills me the most. Is that, like, obviously the only reason they've propped her up is because she's like sucking the cock of a capitalist. Like, that's it. It's like a drugstore romance novel with like Donald Trump cue cards liberally sprinkled throughout. Yeah, absolutely. One thing I like about pushing 60 is I don't have to pretend to like anything. Yeah, that's true. You get to just sort of like let it go. Yeah, the worst possible neoliberal reactionary stuff. Yeah, it's so fucking bullshit. And then a retracted comment. Victini, did you say something that was hitherto unwarranted? Gasp. Gasp. All popular music seems like a psyop these days. Oh, this is great music. Look how many views it has. Yeah. Because you can't buy views, right? Like, that's not possible. You can go see the look on his face that he was going to say that before Mike Myers started to talk. Yeah. Mike Myers was standing there being like, hey, we're about to do something really nice. We're about to do something really nice and raise awareness for Katrina. And Kanye West was just standing there like, I'm going to say some shit. I'm going to say some shit. Yeah. And you know what? Good for him for doing it. Good for him for doing it. Because, like, fuck George Bush, right? Fuck that whole thing. You can see the look on his face. Yeah, boy, do I have egg on my face. If you accept that gaining great wealth and fame within neoliberal capitalist celebrity culture is a difficult, important goal, then Kanye is a genius. There you go, Bumbleguppy. Look at you. You're like, are you sitting over there with like a pipe and like a cummerbund or something today? You're like laying out the like wisdomous truth today, Bumbleguppy. You're like it's taking me like a half hour to come to a point and to like reach a conclusion, and then you just do some like 2-line sentence and just like, yes, if you accept that gaining great wealth and fame within neoliberal capitalist celebrity culture is a difficult, important goal, then Kanye is indeed a genius. Right? That's what you're like today. Finding good art these days is so rare, I've stopped looking. Yeah, dude, I'm in exactly the same boat, actually. Like, you really do have to go into... just like Etsy stores and just randomly hope you find something from some artist who's, like, pouring themselves out onto the page and kind of just, like, find a connection... Right? Like, because everything that's getting shit out these days is just corporate garbage. It's just, like, corporate non-offensive garbage, right? Like, everybody is making stuff so that it can hang in a doctor's office or something, right? Like, everybody's making something so some Amazon business, right? Like, it can, like, hang it there. But it's true of movies, music, books, like, all of it. It's all the truth. Like, what, you think that, like, a person who's actually like pouring out their heart and comes out with something that has some kind of anti-capitalist vibe is going to get promoted by the capitalists? No, like no, it's not. But and everybody's so fucking exhausted. Like everybody's exhausted and they can't actually sit down and actually do the thing they want to do, and everything's exploding in their face constantly. And the formats by which we distribute this shit have changed so dramatically and so quickly that like there's disconnects on that level as well. And like nobody knows where to go to find anything. And nobody's really making anything interesting or unique because everything needs to be made with the permission of a class of people who don't care about art, they care about money. Like that's what it is. And if the art that you create is not immediately going to connect to an already established user base, then they're not going to support it, right? That's why so many like remakes get done, and but then also so many like, oh hey, there's like a short story comic book that has like a niche cult following. Let's make a movie about it, right? And then change the story because that's what people want. No, just decaffeinated coffee. Give you. And you give me a melody to riff on, man. Ba-boom, boom, boom. That's really jazz, dude. That's really jazz. Jazz. Yeah, so much art is controlled by big corps, so it's to make money, not express our shared humanity, yeah. If someone did make something revolutionary, people's interests are too scattered to notice it. Yeah, there's that too, right? Like, and there's, like, we're more fractured as a people in regards to, like, when television media started and like when movie media started, like everybody watched the same thing, right? Everybody watched the same thing all the time. And so there was like a cultural unification to that. And like there weren't that many movies being made in the first place because, you know, they take money and there's big studios and like and there's only so many distributors and all this kind of stuff. But now like YouTube exists, right? Now everybody can create content and everybody can do everything, right? And anything can be done, right? And if you have enough money, you can like make like if you have enough money, you can just make a series yourself, right? And then there's Netflix and Hulu and Crave, and so like everything is just super fractured into its own little category, and nobody's watching the same thing that anybody's watching, and so there is no like cultural unity. Everybody's got like not only a different perspective in their life, but a different viewing habit and a different kind of thing like that. And so we are scattered. It's just totally, we're totally disconnected from one another. Modern media is good at pushing your buttons, not reaching your soul, emotion versus feeling a subtle distinct. Well, and also I feel like lots of modern media is not actually interested in confronting the viewer, right? That the best art is the art that changes your mind, right? That the best art is the art that has you walking away changed somehow, right? But if you confront people who don't necessarily want to be confronted, this fragile culture that we are, then they're not going to go see your stuff anymore, right? And this is true if they like literally don't get, like if you make one movie that the populace goes, I don't really get it, then that's it. It's over. Like, and you can see that with the fellow that made RoboCop, right? Everybody loves RoboCop. Like, even if you're not like a big like action kind of person, RoboCop is tight, right? It's a well-made film, really good story that is all about corporate overreach and corporate takeover and how corporations do what corporations do and are soulless, where they literally take corpses and turn them into robots, right? Like, and RoboCop regains his humanity and rebels against the system. It's an awesome story. It's an awesome and a very prescient, important story that has lots of to say about American society and where it was heading at the time. And then that director, I forget his name offhand, but that director makes RoboCop incredibly popular, right? Incredibly popular. Who is the director? Come on, give me the director. You dickheads, just give me the director. Why am I struggling with the word director? Yeah, Paul Verhoeven, right? So Paul Verhoeven makes this movie, wildly successful. Like, they've made a remake of it. There was like 3 sequels, a series, a comic book line, like all this kind of stuff. Then he goes off and he makes not Super Troopers. Oh my god. Why am I'm totally blanking on all this stuff. He makes... So right after that, RoboCop. Did he also do friggin' Total Recall? What a baller. This guy's a baller, right? Total Recall, one of the great 90s films, right? Total Recall. Also a really prescient and important film, heavily critical of the corporate culture that exists in the United States at the time. He does Basic Instinct and then Showgirls, both of these like notorious films. Starship Troopers is like the decline of his career. And Starship Troopers is the decline of his career in Hollywood. And as a cultural icon in America, because people didn't get it at all, right? People didn't understand that Starship Troopers was this like massive critique of the military-industrial complex. That the society that was going to be erected because of the military-industrial complex, he was presenting to people, and people didn't understand that that's what was happening, right? That they just kind of thought it was all sort of weird. But like his critiques of what was going on in Starship Troopers have really borne out, right? We do live in this odd militaristic society that is kind of getting pissed off about it. And so even if you're as popular as this guy was, like this guy made iconic films. Like stuff like RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, like those 3 films back to back are iconic films. They are massively important films. And then he makes one film that's like, nah, what? And then it's out. Like, nobody knows any of these other films. Like, who's watched? Like Hollow Man, I guess, but like, I didn't realize he directed Showgirls. That's hilarious, bro. That's actually hilarious that he directed Showgirls. That's so funny. Anyway. I don't like the idea that everything needs to be made to movie either. Yeah, some experiences are only possible through reading, others through movies. Yeah, the weirdest thing that is when they take a book or some story that was told, and then they make it... then they change it, right? That's the weirdest thing ever. Like, so this story is popular enough and good enough and has enough backing, like you think you can get enough asses and seats to watch this thing because of the story that it is, and then you're going to change the story. It's always been confusing to me. Like, it's always been the wrong choice. It's always made the story weaker. I feel like I've only ever seen it done successfully, and that wasn't even successful. I'm talking about Watchmen. They made the choice to, instead of do this like alien creatures, spoiler alerts, instead of having like an alien that invades Earth, they just made it so that it was Dr. Manhattan. Like, they connected it to Dr. Manhattan, and I thought it was good enough, right? Although Watchmen itself was something of a letdown. They really like... The director really missed a lot of key important things, I think. And so did the actor who played Ozymandias. That, like, fundamentally, Ozymandias is supposed to be the representation of corporate power in America, and that he is doing what he is doing, believing that it is good, ultimately. Right? To do great evil for the ends justifies the means, that kind of conversation. And the director of The Watchmen clearly didn't accept that Ozymandias was still a human being, that he's still... And clearly the actor thought that he was just insane, that he was just a madman. And you could see it on all of the posters and everything. Like, Ozymandias looked crazy. Like, he just looked crazy. and to the point where they omitted a scene that was crucial to the humanity of Ozymandias, where Ozymandias has a conversation with Dr. Manhattan after his plan is already over, and he elucidates a doubt. He says to Dr. Manhattan, "Did I make the right choice? Was this the right thing to do?" And Dr. Manhattan doesn't answer him and just leaves, leaving the final shot of Ozymandias being one of discontent and doubt. And they didn't shoot, I mean, maybe they shot the scene, but they didn't put it in the movie. And I thought that made the whole piece fall apart. That by changing Ozymandias from a man who believed he was doing the right thing while enacting an extremely evil, an act of extraordinary evil, because they didn't show his doubt, they just turned him into like a one-dimensional cartoon character. And the whole piece fails because of it, right? That the whole point is that he's a human. The whole point is that he's a human being. Like, if he's just like a cartoonish supervillain, it doesn't work, right? And Watchmen was kind of a cool movie for like a lot of reasons, but like that just like, yeah, like, and a lot of superhero movies have this kind of problem where like they don't actually pause and think, these people are people. Like, they're human beings, for God's sakes. Like, ultimately, that's why the Chris Nolan Batman trilogy fails. Because at no point is Batman a person. Like, he might as well have just been, like, a golden god, right? Like, he's just, like, his statements are stupid. He doesn't have any cohesive logic to why he's actually doing anything. There's no sense to it. He just literally regurgitates nonsense that's said to him back to people. That's like literally Bruce Wayne's like whole method of doing things. And I remember even in the third movie, there's like this conversation that Alfred's attempting to have with Bruce Wayne, and like you could tell that the writer was trying to do something, but that everyone involved in the project is just like, yeah, whatever. Like, whatever. Like, at no point in that trilogy does Bruce Wayne grow, change, have his opinion changed, or challenged even, really. It's just like a series of vignettes where he fights against increasingly odd situations. Like, that's really all it is. And so, like, that trilogy is a failure because it doesn't have anything to say. It, like, what does it honestly have to say? Like, there's some good performances in it. Heath Ledger's Joker was a wonderful performance. Is a wonderful performance. But like, what do those movies actually have to say about anything? Like, I remember walking away from that trilogy being like, are we sure that Batman is the good guy? Like, are we sure that Bruce Wayne is actually like the good guy here? Like, are we sure that we're supposed to be rooting for this guy? Like, are we absolutely positive that Bruce Wayne's Batman, like that Christian Bale's Batman, like, are we absolutely sure that he was the good guy in this franchise? Because it seems to me that a lot of effort gets put into pandering to the idea that, like, yeah, we should put up with a guy like Bruce Wayne, that he exists. Well, yeah, and he wasn't the interesting guy, and that's the oddest thing, if you ask me, because Bruce Wayne is interesting. Like, he's obviously, but they didn't show him as a flawed man. He wasn't a flawed man. He was just kind of incoherent. He just, like, and none of the, like, here's what it is. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, the motivating factor for Bruce Wayne is that he was a child and he witnessed his parents get killed. And so he's taken all of this wealth and prestige and everything that he inherited as a billionaire inheritor, and he's funneled it into this, like, one mindseted goal of defeating all crime, of doing something like waging a war on terror, right? Just this ephemeral, I will never actually achieve this goal. I'm dedicating my entire life to the pursuit of defeating crime itself because my parents were killed when I was a child, right? This is obvious psychological trauma. Like, this is obvious psychological trauma that this guy is going through, right? And instead of rooting him in that reality, where he has obviously undergone trauma that he is refusing to deal with. Like, he's refusing to deal with this. Like, for real, like, when Bruce Wayne gets sprayed with, like, scare spray and shit like this, it's his parents that come and fuck him up, right? And everything about that character is rooted in that moment, and we all know that that is true. And if you're going to tell me a trilogy story, then the only satisfying arc for a man like Bruce Wayne is, how does he get over it? How does he get through the trauma? How does he get to the point where he can go, okay, my parents died when I was a child. That was an unfortunate event. I no longer need to define myself based on that event. And I can live in the world in peace without seeking harm. Because what he has chosen to do in order to continuously fight this ongoing war is psychotic, right? Like, it's psychotic what he's chosen to do. He's a billionaire. He's decided to put on armor, like put on a super suit shaped like a fucking bat, walking around looking like a dork. Like, nobody's pointing out that he looks like a fucking dumb dork, right? So he's spending money on that shit with all his fucking toys and super martial arts and everything. And he's spending money on jets and motorbikes and fucking caves and caverns and like space lasers and like all this kind of crazy shit. Instead of stepping back and going, what is actually the root cause of crime? What is actually the root cause of this? What led that man to go into that alley and kill my parents? What was his motivation, right? Because his assumption is that the man's motivation was just, I'm an evil, sinister, bad guy. Bruce Wayne genuinely has a childish view of what motivates criminals. That he views them as evil to just be stopped for the sake of evil, right? But if you actually step back, and as a billionaire especially, right? Right? You're telling me that Bruce Wayne couldn't look at a place like Arkham Asylum and be like, man, I should spend like $10 million and shore up all of the security there and make sure that people like Joker and like these insane criminals can't actually constantly escape from Arkham. But Bruce Wayne wants them to escape from Arkham because that's how he justifies his existence and his actions, right? And so how does Batman... So, like, put him on this path. Like, put him on this path where he's done this. And then confront him about it. And then challenge him about it. And then constantly say to him, do you genuinely believe that this is the thing to do? Like, do you genuinely believe? And so the path of Bruce Wayne is, how does he get to a point where he sees that what he has been doing is kind of insane? Like, it is. Like, it is insane what he's doing, right? And how does he get to a point where he puts it all to bed and he becomes a citizen of Gotham without becoming its oppressor, right? How does he reach that? And honestly, the way that Batman does that is by giving his money away. That's how he does it. That a true Batman arc with a satisfactory conclusion ends with a guy who goes, I'm just going to give my money away. I'm giving my wealth to the poor. I'm going to undercut crime at its root. I'm going to stop demonizing the people who murdered my family. I'm going to stop demonizing them. I'm going to stop othering them. I'm going to accept that their desperation is what fuels this, and I'm going to give my money away, and I'm going to live as a citizen, as an equal in this society. That's Batman's arc. That's how you tell that story, right? I'll be surprised if we ever see it. They're now making a new trilogy because Chris Nolan's trilogy was a failure, right? It didn't work. It wasn't a good story well told. There was some fine performances and some fine cinematography, and they spent a lot of money, right? But it wasn't a good story well told. It certainly wasn't like a trilogy, right? It didn't have cohesion. It didn't make sense, right? And and so now they're doing a new one with Robert Pattinson. And some of the shots that I've seen, I see that Robert Pattinson is sitting there kind of thinking about it the way that I'm thinking about it, which is like, this guy's kind of nuts. Like, Bruce Wayne's sort of crazy. But at the end of the day, it's about what they write. And so, we'll see. Has anyone seen Boys, anti-hero series? Are you talking about The Boys? The Boys is brilliant. The Boys is brilliant. Anybody who's sitting there saying, I'm kind of hedging on The Boys and I don't know about it or any of that kind of stuff, just do yourself the favor. Start watching it, right? Really, really good. Really, really good. Yeah, the crime exists because he's a billionaire, not helping the poor. The poor have no choice but to turn to crime. And a cosplaying billionaire shows up and hurts, if not kill the poor people. Exactly. Exactly, right? That, like, we're supposed to worship this? Like, we're supposed to think that he's a good guy? Right? Yeah, it's similar to Death Wish films. Bad guys just exist for no reason. All you can do is kill them and put them in jail forever. Exactly. Yeah, or try to actually rehabilitate those in Arkham Asylum, yeah? Well, the Boys was great because they really buy into the idea that they're like these. If there was a Superman, like if there was a fucking Superman walking around, he wouldn't be doing shit to help us. Like they right away buy into that idea that like the corporate culture of the United States and the like. I don't think there's anything else. That all of that kind of stuff would completely overwhelm. Right? That the corporate culture that exists in the United States would completely overwhelm any kind of empathetic or compassionate figure. Like some what's his name? The Superman figure, right? He's fucking insane. Like he's just kind of crazy, and like, but not like crazy. Like he just has no peers. Like, nobody can really tell him anything, right? And so he's just, like, operating in the world, and he begins to see, or he does see. I'm trying hard not to spoil anything here, but all of this it's on the surface. Like, it's right away you see this. But he is trying to exist in the world without actually seeing... while trying to kind of treat people as equals, but they're not, right? That it's like Dr. Manhattan, right? Dr. Manhattan eventually leaves Earth because he's just like, I don't relate to you guys. Like, I don't see you as equals. I don't see you as peers. So I'm just going to leave. And he has this kind of like stoic kind of ness about it. But this guy is still human, right? Is The Boys about dudes rock? What? No. It's not like a big wank about like men being men and all that kind of stuff. Like it's much it's a way to critique corporate culture and superhero culture. Like, no. No, that's not what it's about. The Boys the Boys are a group of people who start to work against the superheroes because they recognize that the superheroes are not actually acting in the interests of the people. It's the neoliberal notions of freedom as life of power and no consequence which kills empathy. Yeah, again, Bumble Gumpy, you're like really nailing it, dude. Like that's exactly right. Like The Boys presents superheroes through the neoliberal lens. that says like, well, what does neoliberal Superman look like? Who is neoliberal Superman? And they show you. They show you what neoliberal Superman looks like. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. And what's really, really great about The Boys is that the first few seasons are really good and have their own arcs and all of this. But the character of... why am I fucking blanking on his name? It's driving me crazy. The Boys, the main characters. Like Mr. Doctor... The Homelander. Jesus Christ. The Homelander is obviously like the guy, right? Like he is like overtly and obviously the villain of the entire piece, right? But both seasons do a really good job of keeping him going on his own arc without making him like the apex of the thing, that he interacts with a story as it's unfolding, right? And then, so what this does is it creates a show that's constantly got you moving towards this obvious confrontation and an obvious outcome, or not an outcome, but an obvious conflagration of some kind, and does a really good job of showing you that, like, oh yeah, you know how like there was this confrontation with Homelander that you thought was going to be like a resolution thing? But then the way that Homelander interacts and is in this thing completely thwarts your expectations. And then not only does this not resolve anything, but it also creates other much larger questions about Homelander and who he is as a person. And so there's this like chugging train that's constantly like, and just when you think there's going to be something that resolves, it doesn't, and in fact it blows up into something even bigger. It's a very good show. It's a very, very good show. I highly recommend it to everybody, and it's got a lot to say about corporate power. It's got a lot to say about neoliberalism. It's got a lot to say about Nazism. It's got a lot to say about our modern society that I think makes it very, very, very timely. And if you're, especially if you're in the superhero culture, which these days, like, that's everything, right? Superhero culture is fucking everywhere. We can't get away from it. It's right up there. I highly, 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 highly advise. If you think that The Boys is just about how cool dudes are, you are going to be pleasantly surprised. You're going to be pleasantly surprised. To be honest, many of the best films I've seen in the last decade were independent horror films on Netflix. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, I remember, I recommend very strongly, is it Marianne horror? Yeah, this is exactly it. Marianne, a French horror, right? This woman here, I'm glad that they're using her in the promotions. She's amazing. She's amazing. She had me like, it's a series. I highly advise everybody see it. She had me. I went to bed and then I like had to get up to like turn a light off or something, and I just had myself. I was just saying like, just don't even look in the corners, bud. Just don't even do it. You know she's there. Just don't look. Like, and she's amazing. She's amazing. If you're looking for good independent horror, Marianne's really, really tight. Really, really tight. Good story, well told. Good story, well told. Check out The Dark and the Wicked. I rarely find myself watching horror. But I'm like, can be convinced to watch horror, right? So I gotta like, I'll like be in the room with somebody. I don't want to watch horror by myself, you know? I just don't want to do that. I just don't want to be in a room by myself watching a horror movie. Nah, I'm okay. And I also find that like lots of horror these days is, it's tough to get me. It's tough to get me because I know how a lot of the sausage is made, right? Like I know what happens behind the scenes. So it's really tough. It's really tough for me to get into something, which is why Marianne was such a treat, because they did a really good job. They do a really, really good job of like really getting you into it. Oh, look at you! Well, here you go. This is your time to shine. This is your time to shine, PLC. You gotta let us all know what's the good shit. What's the good shit? I remember when I was a kid, I watched. Do you guys remember the Ernest movies? Right? Do you remember Ernest Scared Stupid? Ernest Scared Stupid. Do you guys know anything about this? Do you know what I'm talking about at all? So this fella here, what was his name? Jim something. He was great. Jim Varney. He's got like a plastic face, this guy. Anyway, he did a series of movies. Called like Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Goes to Camp. And it was all just like, he's an idiot, right? And that was the whole like central sort of thing to it. So then they did Ernest Scared Stupid. Now remember, I'm a kid, like I'm young. But shamefully, I wasn't like that young. I feel like I was like 11 or 12. Like I wasn't like 4. I was like 11 or 12, right? And in the movie Ernest Scared Stupid, there's a troll, right? And I can show you the troll. There he is. Yeah, the troll, right? And the troll is the villain of the piece, and he's going around, and Ernest is like trying to figure out how to defeat this troll guy, right? And there's a moment where the troll starts to like transform, and it's his big like transformation moment, right? Where he's like, and stuff starts growing out of his face and all this kind of stuff. And I got so scared that I had to leave the room. Yeah. And then I look at it now and I'm just like, really, dude? Like, this is the thing? This is the thing that got you? This is the thing that got you? Nah. Oh man, there's a movie that I wouldn't want to rewatch, I'm sure. Oh yeah, The Dark Crystal, man. Did you know that there is a Dark Crystal series on Netflix? That Netflix did like a sequel. Dark Crystal. And what's great about The Dark Crystal is that it is just a straightforward good versus evil, like you're on the outskirts and you climb up the mountain, right? Throw the ring into Mount Doom, right? Like no fucking around, no messing about. I totally feel like I saw the Disney film Darby O'Gill and the Little People in 1971. That name sounds hilarious. Darby O'Gill and the Little People. This does not look scary at all, dude. This does not look scary at all. Watership Down will scare you for that. This has got Sean Connery in it, for God's sakes. Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Oh yes, the little wee people of the Darby O'Gill. Oh yeah, it's it's. Films like this are just unbelievably good, dude. Unbelievably good. If you guys don't know, one of my favorite... Oh, what the hell? I had it in my head. It was there, and then it went away. Oh, no. Does anybody know? It's about field mice who need to relocate their home because a combine is going to come through and wipe it out. And there's this... the protagonist is like a female mouse who gets hold of like a magical artifact, right? Oh, why am I blanking on this movie? Oh no, I love this movie. It's one of my like childhood, like I had it on a VHS tape and I would watch it like once a month and I'm totally blanking. Mice with a Magic Ring, 70s movie. Maybe I'll get lucky. The Magic Ring. Oh, The Secret of Nim. Yes, The Secret of Nim. This movie. Mwah. Mwah. Hey, Loaf, how you doing? Oh, you guys already knew. You were well ahead of me. The Secret of Nim had some of the most baller... like, look at this picture, even. Like, it's just, like, the characterization right? And her journey, right, to get a hold of this magic ring, so that she also had like a sick kid, I think. Man, it's been a long time since I've seen The Secret of Nim. Oh man, I absolutely love this production company. Also made like The American Tale, right? Like Fievel Goes West, all that kind of stuff. Oh come on, what's this? What's going on? Come on, give me the Wikipedia article. Boo. Secret of Nim. Just give me the Wikipedia article. Fern Gully, yeah, Fern Gully, absolutely. I actually think that if you wanted to do like a remake of a movie and be like really successful, it would be Fern Gully, right? Like, don't you think like some outright pro-environmental stuff right now would be absolutely critical? Why is this not going? Is my internet collapsing? I don't know what's going on. Here. But like Fern Gully, absolutely. They could do Captain Planet. I actually have heard that Secret of that they are doing a Captain Planet. No, of course, Robin Williams. I wouldn't even try. I don't even know if I would put Batty in the film, right? Like, just do a different thing. Do like a live action CGI thing, and like, don't even attempt to replace people like Tim Curry. Like Tim Curry did the voice of the Ooze. All right, Wikipedia's crapping itself right now. Too bad. Somebody said something that I wanted to look up. I don't know. I don't remember. Oh, yes. Captain Planet remake. They're doing a remake of this. Is it actually just going to be a live-action superhero movie for real? Because I know that there's like the Don Cheadle thing. Hold on.
Today, we will be talking about the possibility of Leonardo DiCaprio bringing Captain Planet to the big...
Nah, it doesn't. It's all just like... It's all just speculation and shit. Nah. The Brave Little Toaster. Yeah, The Brave Little Toaster. This movie was great, dude. The Brave Little Toaster. You want to talk about good stories well told, right? Like, the story of The Brave Little Toaster couldn't be cleaner. It's literally just a bunch of appliances who get left behind after their owners move, and they go and they find their owner, right? It's like Homeward Bound, Toy Story, right? Like this, just like, oh no, we've been separated, let's go reclaim, right? And because it's such a clear motivation, and like the characters are so well done, and it's so hilarious that you're watching this movie, and it's about a toaster and his appliance buddies, and you're like really rooting for this toaster. But he's just a fucking toaster, right? Like, it's like the smallest scale story that can be told. Homeward Bound. Oh, what's with the sad face? They make it home. Don't worry, it's a happy ending. Happy ending for Homeward Bound. You're giving me a sad face here, Onward. I feel like there's a story. I actually love the short story for that. I can't imagine how great it was when they made a movie of it. Labyrinth? Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you're talking about The Brave Little Toaster. That's hilarious. Yeah, Labyrinth, another really good one. Really, like... Oh, the big dog barely made... But he did. But he made it home, right? That's okay. I know, it's a tough story, right? It's a tough story. It's not like Old Yeller, right? It's not like Old Yeller where they fucking shoot the dog. You couldn't make a film like Old Yeller today, dude. If that kid went out and shot that dog, everybody would be like, boo! Boo! Right? There are some films that I hope they never touch. I hope they never touch To Kill a Mockingbird. I hope they never touch this film. That, like, the black and white version of this film, the slow pacing of it, the purposeful pacing of it, So well told, so well done. Some really great performances in it. I hope they never touch it. So I feel that way about The Princess Bride, right? The Princess Bride, I hope they just never touch. Like it is perfect how it is, right? Like I suspect it'll happen though. They'll at least take a swing at Princess Bride, I think. Like there's it's so annoying to me that we do live in this culture of like let's spend money and go see how bad it is, right? Like that's exactly how I feel about everything Disney is producing these days. That people are going not to see like a good film or to have their views challenged or to see something even creative or interesting. They're literally going to see how bad it is, right? Like I remember when I finally did, let's see what childhood memory they ruined this year. Like, Aladdin. I loved Disney's Aladdin growing up. I thought that this film was really great. It doesn't age very well because a lot of the references that Genie makes no longer make sense. Like, I can really see, like, especially Z kids being like, who is this? What is he even talking about? Like, a lot of that would happen in that film now. But, like, the remake, first of all, let's be real clear, though. Super good poster, right? Like, that's a real nice poster right there. Like, I would happily hang that on my wall, right? But the movie itself sucked. It sucked. It wasn't good. They made a lot of decisions that were obviously pandering. And the number one thing that convinced me that they were just phoning this whole thing in is that they didn't hire, like you've got Jackie Chan's number, right? You know the scene where Aladdin's running around and he's, like, doing parkour, right? He's literally doing parkour. It's like, okay, like, you know Jackie Chan's phone number. Like, you've got a crew of people who can do, like, really sick parkour, right? Nah, let's just have him do a flip. Oh, okay. Beauty and the Beast was great too. It was a bit less meta, but I didn't like the remake of Beauty and the Beast. I remember sitting in because it was the last thing that I went to the theater. I just was like, no more going to the theater for this schlock. I'm not giving my money about this. And I remember sitting in Beauty and the Beast, and Beast started to sing his new song, and it literally was like the da 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 bed, the da 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 head. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go use the washroom. Just didn't miss anything. Yeah, the Orientalism of Aladdin didn't age well either. That's for sure true, dude. Like, oh, really interesting how, like, Aladdin and Jasmine are kind of, like, white, and Jafar is, like, not only, like, super Arab, but also, like, a real stereotypical version of Jafar. Oh, yeah, the Beauty and the Beast, the original Beauty and the Beast, was a masterpiece. I am somebody who attempts to deconstruct film. Like, I'm a deconstructionalist. I'll watch film and I'll literally tear it apart scene by scene. And I have one critique of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, right? I have watched this film way more than I would like to admit because it is absolutely a gorgeous film, like the original. My only critique of this film is that in the scene where the Beast comes and saves Belle from the wolves, right? She's run away from him. She's been on her horse and there's like a pack of wolves that are coming to kill her. And so he comes and does this like super sweet fight scene. Probably one of the best fight scenes that Disney ever did, honestly. Like really kick-ass fight scene between the Beast and the wolves. And then he like passes out, right? And then Belle goes to get on the horse and then she rethinks about it and she looks back at the Beast. And then there's a crossfade where she's walking over to the Beast and then it fades over and the Beast is on the back of the horse and they're walking back to the castle. And I'm like, how the hell did they get that Beast on the back of that horse? There's no way. Beast is unconscious. This dude's like 400 pounds. 400 pounds probably bare minimum, right? Belle is like a little tiny French woman, right? Maybe 100 pounds, right? She's very, very wee. Like, let's say 120. You're telling me, even if the horse, because Philippe's pretty smart. right? We all remember, like, Philippe was, like, going down, and they had the cross path, and he wanted to go down the nice path, but friggin' Belle's dad was like, no, let's go down this spooky path, and Philippe was like, I don't think so, bud. So he's smart. He's smarter. He's got a smartness. So even if he got down and was, like, on his elbows or whatever, right? You're telling me that Belle could, like, roll... Like, Belle could just, like, roll him over, maybe. Or, like, and like, maybe he, like, regained consciousness enough to be able to, like, get himself on the back of this horse. But even if... You're telling me that Philippe can go from this position to just, like, straight up stand up with 400 pounds of beast on his back? It just doesn't make sense, okay? I don't think it's real, so... And that's it. Like, that's it. That's the whole critique of, like, Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast, the original 90s cartoon, is a fucking masterpiece. It every step of the way is just, you can see the care, you can see the love. All of the performances are just absolutely spot on. You can see how much effort they put into casting everybody. That they didn't care about, like, oh, we've got to cast the Cogsworth has to be Ian McKellen, right? They didn't care about, like, the famous people. None of that mattered. It was just like, who is giving us the performance we want? Who is giving us the performance we love? And every just and it was one of the first films where they were using CGI, and all the CGI they used was really tastefully done. That there are moments, of course, where you can tell because it's one of the first films where they were really trying to do it, so it doesn't quite make it into the modern era. But even then, it's still really tasteful, still really clean. They get some really beautiful shots about it. The character of Gaston, the villain of Gaston, is so excellently presented and so powerful and strong in his own right. Like, everything about the film is just exactly right. And then they came along with the new one and were just like, okay, you know how we got it exactly right? Now let's change it. And it's like... And it becomes like meta. It becomes like a stupid meta commentary constantly. Like, this is what Disney is doing now. It's just constantly in a dumbass meta commentary with itself. So someone online will point out, like, you know, Gaston, the real villain, is actually the villagers, because they all loved Gaston, and they were all enabling him, right? And so what did the new movie did? It made all the villagers evil and dingy, and made all of them grumpy and evil, right? And I'm like, no, that undercuts the whole thing, right? The banality of it all. The fact that they are, like, these happy-go-lucky sort of citizens makes Gaston's villainy so much more villainous, right? The idea that now, no, they're all just dingy, grungy, like, shitty people, well, that undercuts the whole thing, right? What are you doing? And, like, people online are like, well, Belle, she's just, like, a damsel in distress type, and so they make her, like, an inventor type, and then they give her, like, a mother-lost backstory, and all of it's pointless. It's just like... Yeah, now we are getting villain redemption movies. I have actually written a script for a villain redemption movie. Because here's the thing I don't like about these villain redemption movies, is that they're not redemption movies, right? They're not redemption movies. They're revision. They're revision movies. Maleficent is revisionism, right? It's straight up. Cruella de Vil, Cruella de Vil's newest one is revisionism. It's completely taking the original story and then revising it and changing it so that, oh, well, they're not as bad, or there was a reason they were acting this way, or something like that, right? Whereas a true redemption story would start from the moment the film ended, would start at the failure moment. You're okay, buddy, you're okay. So I wrote a script. I've written a Jafar script, right? That starts at the moment that he ends up in the lamp, right? And then from there, he goes through the process of recognizing that his pursuit of power was not only harmful to everyone around him, but also was detrimental to himself. as he is constantly propelled out of the lamp, attempts to pursue this path of power that he is on, and witnesses how it destroys people, and then eventually begins to try to talk people down from their pursuits of power and madness and all of this, because he sees finally the destructive quality of it. And every time he ends up back in the lamp, he's confronted with the figures from his own past. Aladdin, Jasmine, the Sultan, right? And he's constantly needing to learn something new about himself through his journeys outside of the lamp and back into the lamp. And he's constantly in a state of growth. And as he's growing and changing, he's actually literally changing colors. Because I based the whole script off of the chakra system. He starts as red, so he's in the root. Then he goes orange, then he goes yellow, then he goes green, and then he goes blue. And I actually wrote it so that time loops. And he actually becomes the genie and goes through the Aladdin story, but now as the genie, right? And he knows something about it. And then, but remember, in the original telling of Aladdin, Jafar already went in the lamp before Genie was set free. And so then Genie is set free, and he didn't expect it. And so then he ascends into the higher divine state, where he realizes and recognizes that phenomenal cosmic power, and I'm not going to use it. That I'm going to let things be as they are. And that's how Jafar finds redemption. There's my Jafar redemption story. What a great way to end the what a great way to end the stream. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're doing well, DM. I forgot to say hi to you, bud. Hope to see you all at tomorrow's protest. Yeah, if you can make it 2 o'clock, Dundas Square, if you're there. Yeah, please check out Marianne. All right, guys. You are a divine being living in divine energy. Don't let these billionaires convince you otherwise. Good luck. We're going to need it.